What's good, IB Nation? Welcome to another edition of the IB podcast. I'm excited. I'm back, rested, relaxed, rejuvenated. And what was the gift that I received on the first morning back at home? Is the availability to go watch Notre Dame football practice. I mean, they just don't draw it up like that, Brian. I'm just saying to just say. I'm excited about it. D Troll Hunter wants to know how it was relaxing. It was everything that it should be while you still have 5 kids. And so like my idea of a vacation is just going, like, finding a beach and just chilling with my wife and just peaceful. Try going to the beach with 5 kids. That is the peaceful is not a word that comes up in that particular description, but for what it was.
Is there much fun. You can do that's peaceful when you have 5 kids?
No.
In any capacity?
No.
Okay.
No. But it was fun. It was good. The kids got a chance to just kind of get away and just be kids. We, took away the devices for certain periods of time where we just got to have family time. And so it was good. It was a lot of fun. And so I appreciate that, D-Troll Hunter. But coming back, jumping right into football, baby. We got Notre Dame getting into fall camp. High school starts on Monday, or at least practices do. And so, man, I'm fired up. It's just fall football all the time now. And we actually get to talk about something that we witnessed on the field, Brian. And that's the exciting part for me, is that we actually get to discuss football. Not that we haven't been talking about football, but now we get to actually discuss football that we've seen at practice. And so we got some availability this morning, and this is day 3 of availability. Day 1 was the full practice. Day 2 was the first partial first part of practice, and today was the first part of practice. Today was the first day in full pads, or at least shells. Yeah. They were in shells, excuse me. They did not have the lowers on.
And the way guys use the lowers nowadays, Vince, it's basically the same thing.
You and I had that conversation.
I mean, there's DBs don't even wear lower body pads.
Exactly.
So, have you ever seen everybody knows what Cam Hart's knees look like because he's never had pads on his knees ever.
Yeah. The mythic 15-yard penalty for not covering your knees with pads, that's a thing of the past, even though it's technically a rule, which is funny because it's a rule that gets charged to the head coach. By the way, I don't know if anybody knew that because I've actually seen it happen. But so no lowers, just uppers today. But there was some hitting going on. You got a chance to kind of hang down.
We call that shells.
Yes, that is correct. It was just shells, uppers. I've heard it called that before, but yeah, we call it shells. You were hanging out by the offensive lineman, defensive lineman there for a little while.
Linebackers, yeah.
Yep, and so they got to pop a little bit, which is good. We always said, you get to find a little bit of something out when they actually start hitting each other, as opposed to, no pads and just helmets. And so we got to see a little bit today, and man, it was good to see these guys running around. There was a lot going on today.
Yeah, it was, Vincent. And I'll get into what I saw from the O-line and the D-line and linebackers and all that. But, this was kind of your first chance to see the team. So I wanted to kind of kick things off with a little bit of what you saw. You were obviously out down there watching the quarterbacks and receivers and all that. And first time getting to see Mike Denbrock at a practice in about 8 years.
Yeah.
And since the last time we saw Coach D at the other Coach D.
Yeah.
At Notre Dame practice. 3. So, it was good to see that. It was good to see that. So I just wanted to get kind of your thoughts of what you saw today.
So a couple things that I wanted to highlight. And this is going to be
real quick, Vince.
Yes.
As Texas Chris just pointed out, did you update Vince that you were biased against was it Angela? Yeah. So we're supposed to remember the company rule that I've put out that everyone has to have the same opinion about Steve Angeli. So
yes,
I want to make sure that
I've
you remember to do that. We don't ever say anything nice about Steve Angeli.
Gotcha.
10-4 IB bias. Just
noted
that.
Well,
forget why you're on vacation.
Yeah, you kind of took the words out of my mouth because I was going to talk about the quarterbacks here real quick. But here's the thing. I have been going to practices and or games and in a media, light since this is, I think, my 21st season. Okay. Never have I ever, that's a fun game. Never have I ever seen the depth at quarterback that I have now officially seen with my own eyes. And what I mean by that is, for example, we saw them doing RVAs, routes versus air, right? When they have 4 quarterbacks lined up and there would be 4 routes. And so each quarterback throws to a different route, and then they move down one spot, and then they throw to a different route. They move down one spot, they throw to a different route, etc., until they've all thrown to every route, and then they change the play.
Which they've been doing since forever.
It's a very, when you've got 4 to 5 quarterbacks, it's a great drill to run, right? Yep. They've got 5, and they were rotating.
Every team in America did that drill today.
Yes, that is correct. 100%. And they should be, to be honest with you. Here's the thing. Watching the ball come out of the hands of all 4 of these guys was just different than it's been top to bottom. Okay. Yep. Now, did some guys throw the ball better than other guys? Sure. No question. But rare was it that there was a ball that hit the ground. I think I saw one incomplete pass.
It was dropped. It was a drop by Cam Williams.
Which is what I was trying to keep track of. But in the past, when we would watch this drill, you would watch a ball go. You knew who threw it.
Day 1, you saw that, Vince.
Okay.
You saw that a lot on day 1.
Fair enough.
Day 2 and 3, a lot better.
Fair enough. So, but day 3, I was impressed at the talent level of all the quarterbacks. I mean, they were all putting the ball where it needed to go. Some balls got there quicker. Some balls got there a little prettier. But all balls got to where they needed to go. All balls were on target. It was just a different looking quarterback group. And so that definitely stood out.
Yeah.
The second thing that stood out, and you kind of touched on it before you threw it to me, was just the presence of Mike Denbrock. To be honest with you, there was a session that they were just running. They were just working motion, and that's not giving away
pre-snap
the farm.
Motion, right?
Yeah, they're working on pre-snap motion, so just putting guys in motion and just working on the timing of the motions, right? And so they would have one guy who would be the motion man, and it was a drill to where he was going full speed, and the quarterbacks had to snap it on time when the motion got to where they wanted it within the play. And Mike Denbrock was loud in a good way, and he was meticulous in a good way. It was, look, we need to be perfect, because if you don't snap the ball when the motion is where it is supposed to be, then there was no point in having the motion in the first place. There's a reason we do a motion. There's a reason we do these things. And so he was getting on the receivers if they weren't going full speed. He was getting on the quarterbacks if they weren't snapping it on time. And it was all about perfection. And he even was given a speech about the fact that we are working the details, and it's very detail oriented and all of these different things. And as Brian and I were walking out afterwards, we were kind of discussing that drill. And he's like, that's what you said, that's what these days are for. I mean, it's for the details, the meticulousness of the, motions and of the steps and how you line up and what are your splits like and all of these different things. That's exactly what they're supposed to be doing the first week to 2 weeks, week and a half. It's the meticulous things. That way it becomes second nature. It becomes, you just do it because you've drilled it so much, right? And so that's what you're supposed to do. And it was just refreshing to hear Mike Denbrock's voice and how on point he wanted everybody on the offense to be on every single rep, every single time. And I just I was sitting in the little stands over there, and I probably had this stupid poop-eating grin on my face. You know what I mean? Just, yeah, I can't say the other word.
Keep going.
Yep. Just like smiling, just watching the whole thing happen. And it was like, yeah, this is great. I was really, really enjoying watching just him coach up the entire offense.
Well, the way that Vince is relaying how Mike Denbrock was communicating is a lot more calm than it actually was. It's a very demanding coach. And then I'm not even remotely saying that as a negative. There's an intensity there.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to not be the one that does it right. And then I mean that in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
But it was, it's noticeably different. And look, I like Jared Parker quite a bit as a person. Thought he had potential as a coach, but there's just a different presence. And same with Tommy Rees. I've been higher on the last 2 coordinators than most fans, right? And it's just different. You have a guy that's 60 years old that's been doing this for quite a long time. He knows what good football looks like, and he knows what not very good football looks like, and he knows how to get to both. And that's something that you see. There's no doubt. And there's just a lot of there's a lot of purpose to what they're doing. There's a lot of intentionality to what they're doing. And it's nice to see that. That's a very, very obvious thing, because we talk about leadership has to emerge from the player level, and that's very true, but there's very clear leadership coming from the coaching direction. And I don't even just mean Mike Denbrock. You just watch, for example, did you notice today when they were going from drill to drill, do you know who the first person associated with the wide receiving core that would arrive at a spot? Do you remember who that was, Vince? Did you watch? It was Mike Brown. Whenever they would go from one part of the field to the other part of the field, Mike Brown's the first one to get there.
Yeah.
It's hey guys, I'm going to show you the kind of intensity. And if your coach is sprinting to a part,
sure, then
you're going to feel like, hey man, I need to step up and get over there and do what I need to do. And those are things that you kind of saw today that, Joe Rudolph, I don't necessarily love the way he coaches the O-line. I mean, I don't think there's enough attention to some of the things that you want to see. Maybe the tempo always, but very active, very demanding. He was a little salty today. He was not thrilled with the O-line. There was one time where his silence was probably louder than anything he said. Is the second team O-line was working and like 4 dudes just fell down, and you'd see him looking at him like,
you got to be kidding me.
You're just like, okay. It's like in his head, he's going like Goose Fraba. You know what I mean? Like he's like, don't lose it.
Count to 10.
Yeah, but there was a lot of intentionality today with what they were doing offensively for sure, and defensively very active over on the other side of the field. Al Washington doing a lot of focus on technique. Max Buller really with a great emphasis today was a lot about block destruction and tackling technique. They were actually going through a tackling circuit on defense. And so Al Washington was working on, with whoever was there, kind of getting hands on, locking out, and getting off that block. So he started with the D-line. Then the linebackers came to him. Then the DBs came to him. So, and then Max Bulla was working on a drill where they were starting here. They'd work around cans, and then he would kind of go with a bag, and they'd have to chase downhill and tackle the bag. And they were doing that same thing, Max. And then on another time, he was working on getting guys that initial, like that little skinny sled without the pad where it's rock, then attacks, shuffle, and then boom, downhill and take on another sled. So they were doing a lot of that. And then everybody was doing it. Like everybody was cycling through. So they were doing a bit of a, tackling circuit, but not just everyone's tackling, but it's about, okay, you can't tackle anybody if you can't get off a block, so working on block destruction. So there was a lot of that we saw today as well.
When I was walking past the defensive linemen as they were starting that rotation, that tackling circuit, what stuck out to me, and this has kind of been the case in the past, but I don't know, for whatever reason it stuck out to me today, is when they were kind of going through that first round of circuit, they were kind of going over some dummies. They would run through the dummies and whatever, and they had to go kind of a high knee kind of a situation. Man, they're athletic. Like the defensive linemen are athletic, and they were just moving so smoothly,
super long
through.
You really see that when you're up next to them. It's just a different looking group.
Yes.
Like Jordan Patelho, and I don't even know that I saw him today in practice. To be honest with you, I'm not. Again, I'm not. But like you just look at him, you look at Howard Cross, and they're just so much beneath everybody else.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a very tall, long. I mean, Boubacar's crazy length. R.J. Oben, Bryce Young, Riley Mills, Armel Mukum. I mean, it's a very long group.
Yeah.
Very long group.
Yes.
Know who just real quick on the O-line, Vince. So, yes, for day one, Pat Coogan was the number 1 left guard. Rocco Spindler was the number 2 right guard. Yesterday, they flipped that. Rocco was the number 1 left guard. Pat was the number 2 right guard. Today, they were both at left guard, and it was Pat first, Rocco second, but they were both working in with the second team. We saw that a little bit today, and they both kind of looked like you need them, like they normally look, right? Rocco has to be more consistent with his footwork and coming off, right? When he does, it's really good. When he doesn't, he gets on him. And Coogan just doesn't have a lot of balance, honestly. He'll hit and then just lose his way. And that's going to have to get figured out. But you know who really impressed me today inside at guard? Obviously, Billy Shrouth had a good day working through things, but I'm really impressed when you see him up close and personal. I'm just very impressed by Sullivan Absher. Like he's huge. Like, he's the only guy that Charles Jagasol doesn't make look small. Well, him and Gerby Lambert are the only two guys that Charles Jagasol doesn't make look small. Because Sullivan's every bit as tall as Charles, and he's not a whole lot thinner than Charles. But, I mean, he moves really well, like really well. Just comes off, just the explosiveness through the hips. And, I mean, he's still learning footwork things, and you could see it. What I liked about him is he would do something wrong, and either the GA or Joe, Coach Rudolph, would get on him, and you'd see him listening, and you'd see him as they're talking. He's like kind of like, yeah, okay, like mimicking what they're trying to get him to do, and just like that's the sign to me of a kid that's is really looking to receive that instruction because he wants to get better. So he may not. I mean, right now I don't think he's in the mix of left guard today,
right?
Simply because you could tell there's still a lot he's learning. He's going to be. I won't be shocked if this year he's somewhat like Billy Schrouth was last year. Or at least what Billy Strauss should have been last year. Like, middle of the season, if you guys as veterans aren't playing well, it's going to become his job. If Coogan and or Rocco, maybe both, don't play better than they did last year, there may come a time where you look at Sullivan Absher and say, okay, he's going to make some mistakes, but he's going to be dominant when he's in there too. And we need to figure out a way to get it done, because either get beat because your guys aren't good enough, or you're going to get beat because you've got a guy that doesn't know what he's doing. But the guy that may not know what he's doing to the level those other guys does, he's going to at least be dominant, right? And you know, that's what in the first 4, 5, 6 games, you help him figure out what he's doing. And then once that light starts to go on a little bit, he's going to be hard to keep off the field. Very hard to keep off the field. He's just there's a different size and movement look to him that you're just like, yeah, that guy's got a chance to be pretty special.
Yeah.
Here, you know, and we've seen though. I mean, Vince, you said this is your 21st year.
Yeah.
I counted it. This is my 14th.
Okay.
Because my first year really covering the team was 2010. And then of course I took 12 and 13 off because I was coaching. And so this is my 14th year covering Notre Dame. And I've seen Zach Martin for 2 years. I saw Quentin Nelson for 4 years, I mean, or 3 years, because I wasn't here. And no, yeah, because he was a freshman in 2014. I saw Mike McGlinchey for all but his freshman year. I've seen Ronnie Stanley for most of his career. I saw Liam Meikenberg his whole career. We know what a really good offensive lineman looks like. And when you look at Sullivan Absher, like, he looks like those guys, right? There's something different about him. You don't know when the light's going to go on, but when it does, boy, it's going to be fun to watch. And it was very obvious today, because I didn't pay attention to the line the first couple of days outside of who was doing it.
There's no point.
And they have pads on.
Exactly.
Today, you're just like, okay, let me see who's coming off the line with some more urgency.
Yeah.
I will say as a whole, there was way too much lunging from the interior today. Way too much getting your front pads way too out in front of your feet.
Yeah, and there was some stance issues for me with a couple of guys. I don't necessarily want to bring up who those guys were, but like too much butt in the air, and which if your butt's in the air, your head is down. And I got a problem with that when you're first starting out, because what are you going to, when you take your first step, your head is down. That's not a great way to start off finding a guy to block. So I did have an issue with that. But one thing that did stand out to me in a positive way was just the length of Emil Wagner's arms. I mean, when he would lock out a guy in front of him, it's like, you're not getting in there, man. Like, the length of his arms is something else. I can see the upside there. You know what I mean? He's just very, very long. He's just very long. And if he can still do what he needs to do there, I like the Emil Wagner at right tackle. I do. I like it a lot. One other position group I did want to bring up, though, Brian, that we talked about as we were walking to the car. You asked me about the running backs.
Yeah.
I wanted to bring them up.
Let me say what I
okay.
I forgot I was going to bring that up to you. Here's what I said yesterday. And contrary to popular belief, you are allowed to disagree with me. I look at this group and I say, look, I'm not saying that this group is the best position group on the team. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying they're going to be the best running back room in college football this year, but I'm saying this. When it comes to just God-given physical talent and pound for pound, how they look, I think this is the most talented position group on the roster.
Man.
That's saying something.
It's saying something big time compared to the other there's other position groups that are mucho talented.
Yeah,
obviously.
D-line, O-line, tight end, DB,
right.
Quarterback.
Right.
Yeah.
But the way they set things up at practice, and I kind of walked all the way around to the other side, and that's where the running backs always kind of do their thing, their individual work. And when the quarterbacks and the wide receivers were doing RVAs, runs versus air, the running backs came over and they were kind of doing some individual stuff, and they were running the gauntlet, and they had this, basically this gauntlet that they run through, and then there's Dylan McCullough with a stick with a boxing glove on the end of it, and he's just trying to rip the ball out when they come through the gauntlet, right? Let me just say this. These gauntlets are not easy to get through, first of all. Okay. And
I remember I never did one till I got to college. And I was like, what the freak? This is ridiculous. Because they made the quarterbacks or the receivers go through it my freshman year. And I was like, what? Like, I was expecting to have a little bit more give.
Yeah.
Than it did. You got to run through them suckers with some, you got to put your shoulders down and explode your hips through them suckers. Otherwise, you're going to get, what I mean?
And that's with like a 5-yard head start, right? Because you got to kind of get some momentum to get through there. He had the running backs lined up at the start of the gauntlet. No running start whatsoever. It was just, you got to explode out of your stance and get through this gauntlet to a man, top guy all the way through the walk-ons, by the way, because there's a couple of walk-ons that don't look like walk-ons. I'll just say that.
Yeah, Jake Tefelsky is a Division I athlete.
Yeah.
Like, that kid is not, I mean, that kid's 6 foot 225 and built.
Right. And Justin Fisher, there's no excess anything on Justin Fisher. You know what I mean? Like, so to a man, every one of these kids, they were lined up at the beginning of the gauntlet. They would explode out of their stance and come through. They all got through without any issue whatsoever. And you could tell that gauntlet was pushing back. Okay. It's just a pretty looking group. I mean, that's the best way I can put it. It's just a good looking group. We'll see what they can do with the ball in their hands, but I'm telling you right now, it's a good-looking group, man, and it was fun to watch. Those guys just running through a gauntlet. That's all it was. They're just running through the gauntlet, and it was fun to watch, Brian.
Yeah, and you know what else was fun to watch? Nobody ran through it backwards, like Michael Parks pointed out. Do you remember when Cam McDaniel did that?
What?
He ran through it the wrong way.
You're never getting through if you're running the wrong way.
No.
It only gives one way.
And people say, Cam McDaniel didn't do that. The running backs coach is the reason that happens, because you start, or not the run. It's probably not the running backs coach. It's probably whoever your GA is supposed to get the thing set up.
The trainers, or not the trainers, but like the managers.
Yes.
That's really funny.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
That's pretty funny.
You don't want to have that happen.
No,
you don't want to have that happen.
No, you don't. So.
Unless you want to know what it's like to get hit in the hole by Manti Te'o. That might be a good prepare for Manti drill. Hey, guys, we're facing Manti Te'o today. So we're going to try to run through the gauntlet backwards.
Good luck.
If you can get through that, you might have a chance against Manti.
Good luck.
There you go. There you go.
Oh, that's fantastic.
But I thought, I mean, that was it, Vince. I mean, again, 5 periods. It's all individual.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, my guy, Vince, didn't get to see James Rendell punt. But you did get to see him in the state. Did you see him inside when you walked inside?
Yeah.
That's a big boy, isn't it?
Yeah, he was wearing like number 16. I thought he was a different number, but he's wearing number 16 at practice.
A tall kid, man.
He's a big boy.
Legs.
Well, he stands out. Look,
he looks like he should be playing 3 on the basketball team.
Right.
And he's just super long. Like,
it's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
He when he's hanging out with the rest of the specialists, he sticks out. I'll just say that he's like at least a head taller than I think everybody else. I mean, he sticks out compared to everybody else, and those guys are kind of off doing their own thing and whatever. So they kept snapping him the ball, and he was just working on his drops.
Yeah,
he never actually kicked one.
Like, come on, kick one.
I know. I was like really taking my time, like walking out of practice, hoping to see one, but not so much. Yeah. So maybe next time. So that's going to do it for our practice report.
Real quick, linebacker wise.
Yeah.
Seeing Jack Kaiser up close and personal, he's filled out a little bit. He still doesn't look like a normal inside linebacker, but man, he's a really explosive athlete. And he's actually, I was concerned that he might tighten up a little bit by putting on an extra 10 pounds. He did not. He looked really good through drills. Jalen Sneed, this is the most consistent and comfortable. It's a good way of putting it. He's looked just technique, working through drills, very explosive. It's the first time I've ever seen Jalen Sneed go, well, this first 3 days, because I've now seen him do it twice. This is the first time I've ever seen Jalen Sneed go through practices where it looks like he has a purpose in mind, other than just I'm here because I have to be.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. And so that's a great sign to see. Drake Bowen, very powerful. Like you can just see when he's not quite the side-to-side athlete that the other linebackers are, but downhill he's very explosive, but he's a very powerful athlete. And this is the first time I really was this close to Kingston Viliama-Asa at a practice, and to see him up close and personal at his size and how well he moves was like, okay, like you see it on film. I wasn't surprised by it. There's a difference in being surprised by something and just, okay, now I've seen it up close and personal. It's really good to see, but you saw like, okay, this guy's going to be special. And even a guy like Preston Zinner, like they got to figure something out with Preston Zinner. They got to figure something else out with Viper, tight end, something, because that kid's too big and too athletic not to be buried at linebacker. Now he should be where he is at linebacker. I'm not saying he shouldn't be further along. I mean, this is a loaded position, but this is the whole thing. Is like when you look at a kid like that and how well he moves around and at his size, you're like, man, you got to figure something out with that guy.
Right.
You know, and you just look, this is Teddy Rizak is at least a year away physically, but movement wise, you're like, yeah, they weren't lying. The people that told me he was a low 4.5 were not lying to me when you watch that kid move around. So that was good to see. But I love the emphasis on efficient footwork that Max Bulla is emphasizing in practice with the linebackers. It's a lot of times when you see guys go through the segmented drills, Vince, you hit a sled, and then you work through the side, and then you go downhill. They really focus on like exaggerating, like, you know, do this, then do this. They really segment it. He really focuses on, he wants it to be one fluid motion. Hit this, get off, get downhill, work side to side, explode downhill, which I liked. I really like that. I don't like when people segment things where it's like it's a clear break, break, because that's not how football works.
No.
Football's you got to flow, you got to go. And that little thing right there I thought was really good to see. So that's my final practice observation from today.
So that's going to do it for our practice report. Stick around, don't go anywhere, but make sure you hit the like button, the subscribe button, the notification bell, share with your family and friends, all the good stuff, boards.irishbreakdown.com. That way you get those practice reports ASAP, frankly. As soon as we get back, they get written up and posted, but you're only going to get that kind of access if you're on the boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, Brian, it is that time. We have come. It is Friday, which means it is the Friday Free-For-All Mailbag. We've got a boatload of questions already queued up, ready to rock and roll. Let's just jump into it, man. Let's just get after it. I'm excited. It's the best day of the week.
Remind people of how the process works.
Yes. So if you are going to put you're going to put a question in, get in the chat, little MB at the beginning or the mailbox emoji. That way it's easy to see. We can star those up, get them into the queue. If you want to jump your question to the top of the list, you got to give us a super chat. You give us a super chat, it gets jumped to the top of the list. And we will answer that question next, but we will pretty much go in order for the most part, unless some person put in like 20 straight questions. We might
had as much of that lately.
Okay,
yeah,
there you go.
Which is good.
Yeah, that's definitely good. So, but we will try to get to everybody's within the appropriate amount of time. I don't think we ever get to everybody's, but yeah, the appropriate amount of time so that we're not here, all day. But hey, we're here for the long haul, and I'm excited about it. So. Again, MB or the mailbox emoji in the chat, and we'll get that question up as soon as we can.
Speaking of super chats,
boom. John A1, thank you so much for the super chat, my man. Really appreciate it. Actually, I was cleaning out my shelf in my closet, and I came across, the coin that you gave us when we were down at the bowl game. And so I always keep it right there on my shelf, and just made me think of you, John. And so I'm glad you got the first question today.
I know where mine is too.
Yeah.
My wife has this box she has for her really nice jewelry. I put it in there.
Yep. So there you go. So John's question, based on what you've seen so far, do you believe the defense will be able to execute aggressive play calls such as the infamous double safety blitz with consistency in 24?
Well, I'm not a huge fan of double safety blitzes unless you're inside the 5.
Right.
It's too soon for that, John. I appreciate your super chat. It's a little too soon for that. I will say athletically, I think they can do that. As far as do they have the defense down enough and those type of things, it's too early for that. It's too early for me to say that. I mean, Al Golden is going to run his defense, right? And he's going to have a much more overall secondary is going to, in linebacker, you're going to be more athletic than you were last year. I shouldn't say way more athletic. You're way more athletic at certain spots. That number 2 safety spot, you're going to be more athletic than you have been the last couple of years. Your linebacking core is you're not losing any athleticism from the guys you lost. So you're not, because we felt Maris and JD were very athletic guys. But you're bigger now at linebacker at certain spots than you were a year ago. You're every bit as athletic, if not slightly more so, and you're going to be more athletic at safety. So talent wise, they should be able to do those type of things. But as far as are they going to be good at it or not, it's too early to tell.
Yeah,
we've seen of the 3 practices, only one of them was a full practice, and that was without pads. Right. So it's a little too early. But I mean, look, they're a long athletic defense, Vince. You saw that today.
Yep.
This is a very long athletic team. We saw it in the spring.
Yep.
So
that's
you're
not
surprising. You're going to be able to do some of those things. Like some people felt like, well, the D line's as good as it is, doesn't mean you can blitz less. And I'm like, I actually think it's the opposite. If you're someone like Al Golden, I mean, when Brett Venables had those great D lines at Clemson, he didn't blitz less. He blitzed more because it's like you're so focused on my front that you've got to now figure out a way to then also handle our linebackers. That's just kind of the way he looks at it. So I think you're going to see that. But athletically, they're going to have all the tools they need to be that kind of dominant group. And we'll see if we'll see what it looks like specifically. But it's too early for me to say specifically schematically these are things that they're going to be great at.
Right.
I think they can execute what he's done in the past really well. It's about all I can say.
D-Troll Hunter, 3 days in. If it were your call, who would be your quarterback roster order after Tyler Buckner at QB1, of course?
I mean, I'm okay with where it is now. And I would say I'd probably be a little bit quicker with the trigger when it comes to making a move at number 2. But right now, I'm comfortable with where it is now. I mean,
it's fine.
It's like, look, Steve Angeli has to learn to throw the ball beyond his first read. He's going to have to figure out how to do that. Right. But I don't think he's going to turn the ball over a ton. And the younger guys, you'll see CJ forced a couple balls in there that last practice that we saw, and they're still part of that learning process. It's just look, there's a very clear. What I do have a bias in one area. I'm biased towards talent, and I tend to like talent and can recognize talent. And the reality is, Vince, and you said it today when we were walking away. No, I think I said it to somebody. Else said it to me. I think it was you. But the 2 young guys throw the ball better than 2 older guys. Just pure throwing it. Just pure throwing it. I mean, there's a lot more that goes into playing quarterback than just can you spin it. But CJ and Kenny, if you're just talking how the ball looks coming out of their hand, it looks better than it when Riley and Steve throw it. Just does. You know what I mean? So I would probably give those guys a little bit more work with the 2s than they've done through 3 days, based on what we've seen, because there's a significant difference in just arm talent there. But right now, I'm comfortable with where the quarterback order is. And I've said this before, if you go into a game this season and if Steve Angeli has to get you out of a game, I'm comfortable with that. If I got to replace Riley Leonard for more than 2 games, I'm going with one of the 2 young guys. And 2 weeks ago, I'd have said it's going to be CJ. But from what we've seen the first 3 days, Kenny Minchie is locked in right now and battling. And he's now back to what I hoped he would be, which is can Kenny have the sort of the aggressiveness to come out there? And at least from what we've seen so far, he's really upped it. He's a little bit more locked in than he was at this time in the spring. So that's a good sign. Good sign to see. I wonder how the blue gold game because he struggled early in the blue gold game, but he finished really well in the blue gold game. I wonder if that kind of gave him a little bit of an emphasis, like, dude, I actually can do this. I'm actually a pretty good player, and maybe that hopefully pushed him a little bit more than what we saw. Because again, if you think CJ Carr is the answer, you want Steve Angeli and Kenny Minchey to be as good as they possibly can be, because then that forces CJ to really raise his game. Even if you think that's the truth, you want to see Steve and Kenny playing as well as they can, because then if CJ gets the job, he really is as good as we hoped he would be, because those two guys are good players in different ways. And that's something that it was good to see that. Very, very good to see that today, or the last couple of days. But I'm comfortable with I'll wait to get to some others, but 3 days is not a time to be mixing the depth chart up a lot based off what your plan was already going in. If you had a plan for a battle, it has to go at least a week before you start really messing with it.
Well, and from a quarterback perspective, a quarterback standpoint, I mean, at least what we've seen, they're not doing anything that's going to differentiate one guy from
what we see.
From what we see. I mean, it is drill work. You know what I mean? Yes, there are certain things that you can see how the ball comes out and things like that. But, we've talked ad nauseum about, what are Steve Angeli's weaknesses. Well, one of his major weaknesses is progressions and going through his progressions and things of that nature, right? We haven't really seen anything like that for him to even attempt to be good or bad at it. You know what I mean? As far as in practice is concerned. And so that starts to come as you start to build on the playbook and things of that nature. And so this is all about drill work and footwork and things of that, doing that up front. And then when you start getting into plays and dissection and, reads and things like that, that's where kind of the rubber meets the road when you're talking about the quarterback position, right? I mean, you can tell some stuff from some other positions in drill work, and you can tell stuff in quarterback play with drill work. But the important thing is the ball coming out on time? Is it going to the right place? Are you able to read the defense? Those kinds of things. They're not really going to be doing that in volume until next week at the absolute earliest, right? So, yeah, it's going to be a minute before they start shaking up the depth chart, in my opinion, if they do at all. I mean, maybe they don't, but it'll be a little bit.
I have to say this. Archer 452, one of our resident Ohio State fans, says, maybe don't run the double safety blitz. Listen, man, you're not able to comment on that. The Notre Dame fans can say that. You're not allowed to say that. It's still too soon. It is still too soon, Archer. That is not okay.
Gifted you that W, man.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness gracious. All good, man. We're just messing with you. Nobody liked that blitz. Nobody liked that blitz.
No.
Yeah. Still stings.
Yes, it does. John A1, if the NCAA adopts the NFL policy to wear soft caps during games, will the legacy of the golden helmets die?
I'm confused by this. The NFL teams have to wear.
They don't have to. I think they can if they want to.
Okay.
They're allowed. I think
the only way that goes away is if it's a situation where they force everyone to wear them.
Yeah. Because not everybody wears them in practice. Quarterbacks don't wear them.
Way more this year than in the past.
Agreed.
Yes.
I do agree with that.
Yeah.
None of the QBs had it because they're not going to get hit. So what's the point?
Yeah.
I don't. Were the offensive linemen wearing them, Brian?
Yes.
They were?
So.
Okay.
I believe so, yeah.
Most of the receivers were wearing them. The running backs, for the most part, were wearing them. I mean, it's definitely more. You've
Especially
seen that number
early
increase.
In camp.
Yeah.
Right. I used to kind of be opposed to the idea because I just felt like it's like, dude, you got to get these guys used to contact. Like, you can't have those on all the time and then just not have them on game day.
Sure.
The more I thought about it, I was like, this is anecdotal, so it may not have actually been this way, but I always felt like a lot of the concussions that happened during my coaching career happened in the first week of practice.
Sure.
When you went from not wearing a helmet for months to wearing a helmet and it's like, it actually kind of makes sense to have those on early, but I think eventually you kind of have to wean them off of it a little bit. Right. And we'll see if they do that or not. But look, I'm all for things for player safety, as long as we understand that we just got to think a little bit more long-term about certain things. I'll just leave it at that. But like I said, the only way that I look at it is, will they do it? And as far as now, does the NFL, do they force guys to wear the NFL policy? They have to wear it in practice.
I don't think so. I just think that they allowed it as a possibility if you really want to wear one during a game.
Gotcha.
I would be surprised if a whole lot of guys actually do that.
Yeah,
but
like, did you watch the Bears game last night, Vince? Did anyone have it on last night?
And then I got overruled.
Okay.
So plus they weren't playing any of their starters, so
right.
It was.
Those are always my favorite spring games. To be honest with you, is when you is the non-starter ones, because you actually get to see guys you're not going to get a chance to see a whole lot in the season. But yeah, I didn't watch the game, so I didn't notice that anyone had it on. But I mean, we've seen guys in the past have to wear special helmets. You remember Mark Kelso? That I'm actually looking at some highlights of the Bears-Texans game, and I literally don't see anyone wearing those.
Yeah.
Unless they look different in person than they do.
They don't. They don't. They
like
look
maybe for like games, they're a different type or something like that. I did in the highlights. I did see Khalid Kareem was balling yesterday.
Yeah.
So that was good to see. But like, you remember Mark Kelso looked like not Marvin the Martian. What was the Martian from the Jetsons? Remember that big old head? Yep. Remember Mark Kelso had for the Bills, that saved for the Bills because he had some head issues, but he had like a giant padded on his helmet that he had to have on his helmet. So I mean, especially if you have concussion issues. I mean, look, sure. I'm good with that. Just for me, it's like John asked, should they adopt the soft cap policy for safety? I think they should give people choice, inform people of what the studies show, what's the data show. This is what data shows with it, without it. Give them real data. Don't give them spin data to, get them to do what you want. Give them real facts, and then let people make choices. Big fan of that. Well, when it comes to their own actual bodies, like where their decisions of their body doesn't affect another being. But when it comes to things, and that was my whole thing, like during the 2020 and 2021, like let people make choices. Give them the actual facts. Don't lie to them. Just let them make choices. And then that's kind of where it comes down to. So,
well, and the technology of helmets these days too is actually really good. I mean, it's a big difference even from when you and I used to play. Oh, gosh, yes. I mean, it is. I don't know when the last time you had a helmet in your hand, Brian, but like
look way different. They don't look as nice, in my opinion. The modern helmets don't look as nice
because they got all the different like pieces and parts to them and everything. But it makes sense.
Way safer.
They're way safer. Like I put my kid's helmet on the other day and I'm like, holy cow. Number one, they're about half as heavy. Number two, they fit so much better, like around your actual head, as opposed to just, you got something on there. I mean, the helmet technology is so much better than it used to be.
And that's what I would love to continue to focus on is make the helmets safer.
Absolutely.
And that's a big key.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The Great Kazoo. That's who it was. The Great Kazoo.
The Green Martian guy?
Yeah, had that big old head, remember, up top? Yeah, Mark Kelso had that. So, yeah, good stuff. Good stuff.
John A1, the current projected starters at both tackle spots seem to struggle in opposite areas. Wagner versus power rushes, Jagasaw versus speed rushes. How should the staff address those weaknesses?
Well, I don't think Jagasaw has struggles against speed rushes. I know that's the narrative out there. I don't think that's actually the reality. Go back and watch the spring game. Watch every play. Don't just watch the two where he got beat, because there's plenty of times where speed rushes he handled just fine. Charles Jagasaw has mechanical issues that at times cause him to have a hitch in his giddy up. That's when he gets beat. Athletically, he can handle speed rushes just fine. He's got to play with proper angles. Right? That's the big thing. Get out of your stance in the proper angle. If you go too flat, you're going to get beat by speed. If you go too back, then you could get beat by power. Handle it that way. Right? Like coach up the technique. He doesn't have an issue with speed. I've seen Charles Jagasaw get beat with a bull rush. Why? Because he came up in his stance too high and he was on his heels and the guy got in his chest and drove him back. That's just it's a technical thing with Charles. But I just Vince, I know you've told me that this narrative is out there because I listen to whoever I'm co-hosting with. That's what I listen to. But I see no issue with him when his mechanics are good. I see no issue with him, with speed rushers. Everyone is going to get beat occasionally by a very good speed rusher.
Sure.
It's going to happen. But I don't think overall it's an issue. It comes down to he's got to be more consistent with his focus and his technique. That's the key. With Emil, it's different because Emil does have a genuine issue with power rushes because of his lightness. For Emil, it's just he's got to do a better job of really anchor. If his body is where it needs to be to hold up,
sure,
Emil has to do a better job of anchoring against those type of moves. And for him, a lot of it's going to be about angles. He's going to have to play with really good angles. If he takes on just Nick Scowerton in a straight bull rush, he gets caught squared up on his heels, he's going to get beat. So be good with it. Now, the other thing they can do schematically, Vince, is there are some things they can do with chipping and cutting.
Right,
I mean, you are still allowed to cut, right? You just you can't cut the way that they used to. There's some things they could do in that regard.
You can't like cut and roll.
Yeah,
like
you can't backside cut. I'd have to
Yeah.
look into the specific rule on that, to be honest with you. But I again, is his body going to be able to hold up or not? That's the big key. But for him, it's going to really come down to he especially is going to have to make sure his base is always strong. And I don't mean strong as in like weight room strong. I mean like, like if you have a friend and you guys remember, I don't know if you guys did this as kids, maybe we were just bored and stupid, but you do that thing where you try to like push each other and see who could push each other back, right? You got to really brace yourself for that. You know what I mean? Well, if you don't brace yourself the right way, you could win 3-4 in a row where you braced yourself and you're stronger, but then all of a sudden that one time you don't have your feet set, he goes a little too soon and he gets up underneath you and you're getting beat. I'm stronger than that guy. Just beat him 3-4 times in a row. But that one time I don't have my base set, I got beat. Well, he's going to have to really focus on that base.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the big thing for Emil.
Muhammad Abdi, Brian, Northern football programs seem to be dominant in every division except FBS. Examples: North Dakota State, South Dakota State University, Montana, Patriots, Mount Union, Purple Raiders, etc.
Well, I mean, the defending national champion was from Michigan.
It's true.
One of the best programs in all of college football in the last 10 years has been Ohio State. Notre Dame's been pretty flipping good in the last 10 years. I mean, I don't think that it's really that different. I mean, Southern schools have always been very strong. There's never been this contingent of like 20 Northern schools that were great. It's never been the case. Here's another reason why. To answer your question specifically, the reality is there's a lot more Southern schools at the FBS level. There's some Southern schools in the FCS level, but not a ton. And there's only a couple in Division III. I mean, there was a time when I was at Christopher Newport, Vince, that we were the southernmost school on the East Coast of the Division III level. Like the schools in our league. Like we were in Virginia, and then like we weren't the southernmost school. The teams in our league were, because we were in a league with like Chowan and Methodist and some of those North Carolina schools. We played Greensboro, but like there's no D3 in South Carolina. There was no D3 in Georgia. There is now. There's no D3s in Florida. So like we would literally go to these, when I was at Defiance, we would go to these recruiting fairs in Florida and try to find these D2 and D3 kids, because there's just not a lot of schools down there at that level. And so that's why a lot of those kids go up north. I mean, Mount Union, when they were beating us, I was coaching back in 2001, had studs from Florida on their team because they would go down there and get those guys.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of part of it as well, is there's just not as many of those Southern schools that is an option for those kids. And, that's something that
it really is amazing how national some of the lower level schools rosters are. It really is shocking to me, because I figured they'd be, and the majority are regional, but not always. I mean, not always.
The other thing is some of those schools produce a lot of really good, like the best players in Indiana tend to be 1AA, 2-3 type of guys.
Sure.
Best guys in Florida tend to be D1 kind of guys, right?
Yep.
And in certain states, you're gonna, guys are gonna get how's the way to put this, Vince?
Overvalued.
Yeah, the benefit of the doubt, and you'll give
you'll give a
scholarship to a Florida kid before you give one to an Ohio kid because the assumption that the Florida kid is better.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's some of that as well to it. But like Wisconsin has great Division III football. Why? A lot of the best, and it's predominantly all from Wisconsin and then some from Illinois.
Yeah.
Why? Because that's what that state produces really a lot of, is that type of guy. That's why the walk-on program at a place like that's really good, because they'll get some of those really good. They're not really good enough to be necessarily out of school Division I type of guys, but they produce a lot of those. They produce a lot of those really good football teams. That's why Ohio has such great Division III football, because there's the MAC, Ohio State, Cincinnati, and then for a long time there was no 1AA outside of Youngstown and Dayton. No D2. Now I think they have Ohio Dominicans D2, I believe.
Well, Dayton doesn't even give athletic scholarships.
Correct.
So
Youngstown did, and then there was no D2. So it's like, if you didn't go to the MAC, you went to D3. We would beat Dayton for guys because we could give better packages, to your point, because Dayton played in that non-scholarship level of like with Valpo and Morehead State,
Butler,
like that. Butler.
Yeah.
Right. And so we would beat them for recruits because we could give them better packages. So we recruited against Dayton for the best players more than we'd recruit against other Division III schools. And so, those are the things you look at, is just that there's Ohio. There's a lot of, so where in Virginia, for example, the tough time that we would sometimes have at Christopher Newport was you not only had UVA and Virginia Tech, but then you had Richmond, who's a 1AA school. You had Norfolk State, who was a 1AA school. Then Old Dominion came along. They were a 1AA school. Now they're a D1 school. You had Virginia Union, which is a D2 school, HBCU program. You had Virginia State, who was a Division II program. So there just was a lot more of those 1AAs and 2s where kids would go to.
Sure.
And so we're in Ohio, there weren't, it was the MAC, and then it was D3.
Yep.
Outside of Youngstown.
Yeah, same with Indiana. There's just not a lot of options.
No, I mean, there's Indiana State.
You got to go to Michigan.
The one thing about Indiana is there are a lot of those NAIAs that can give money that would make life a little tough. We'd lose kids when I was at Defiance and we were recruiting Indiana. We'd lose kids to Marion and St. Francis and teams like that. But there just aren't a lot of those programs in certain states, and that helps. I mean, in Wisconsin, it's like Wisconsin. And then the 2 Wisconsin football leagues, because there's actually 2 leagues where there's the University of Wisconsin system schools. That's Whitewater, Oshkosh.
Those teams are all good.
Really good. And then there's the other one that like St. Norbert's in, and some of those. There's a lot, but there's no 1AA school in Wisconsin, I don't believe. I don't believe there's any D2 schools in Wisconsin. It's like you're going to Wisconsin or you're going D3. And that's a big reason a lot of those schools are really good.
Yeah.
And so the best players from those states go to that school.
Right.
And then they're able to build up their reputation where they can kind of go out and find some of those players. And so, and then once you kind of start that reputation, you go out and get it. And there's a lot of those really good football players, like Trey Lance, who was a great player at the 1AA level, but he was from Minnesota. And so, and the other thing too is those states tend to get under recruited.
Right, of course, yeah.
And so some guy that's really talented who doesn't go to the University of ends up at some 1AA school, and they really are very good.
Mm-hmm.
So those things kind of, because I mean, if you think about who's dominated Division 1AA the last decade, it's been North Dakota State and South Dakota State. I mean, that, James Madison, and that's another Virginia school that we used to have to deal with all the time. But like University of Virginia is not a very big, or the Virginia's not a very big state, Vince, as far as population wise. I mean, it's gotten a little bit bigger in recent years because of all the DC transplants and all the people that work in DC, which, a lot of them don't live in the D.C. area, Maryland. Some of them live in Maryland, but a lot of them just go right across the bridge and live in Virginia.
Yeah,
and so but if you look at like the number of, I always look at it like this, Vince. You look at the number of electoral votes, right? Virginia only has 13. That's it. You compare that to like Florida, who has, where's Florida at? Florida has 30. Georgia has 16. To have 3 more, that's a significant population shift. Illinois even has 19. Mm-hmm. So Virginia's closer to Indiana in electoral votes than it is a lot of those bigger states. Ohio's at 17, and Ohio used to be in the 20s.
Yeah, they did.
And so you're a smaller state. Well, if you think about Virginia, there's Virginia Tech, Old Dominion, you got 4 Division I football teams in the state of Virginia now. How many are there in Ohio, Vince? Like it's like you've
There's
got
Ohio, there's Bowling Green, there's Ohio State, obviously, Toledo,
Cincinnati,
Akron,
and Kent State. So you've got 7.
Yeah.
So there's 7 there, and then you've got Youngstown as a 1AA.
Yeah.
That's 8 schools that can offer scholarships, and then a bunch of D3. And this is a state that's significantly more populated than Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in Virginia, you've got UVA, you've got Virginia Tech, you've got James Madison, you've got Old Dominion, who are D1. Then you have Norfolk State, you have Richmond, who are both 1AA. Then you have Virginia State, you have Virginia Union. 8 scholarship programs in the state of Virginia. So, so Virginia doesn't produce as many. Virginia used to have really good D3 football. Bridgewater was really good. They played for a national title one year. CNU, when I was there, we were really good. But since Old Dominion and a lot of those teams have kind of come along, James Madison used to only give out 65 scholarships because they were at the FCS level. Now they give out 85. Mm-hmm. They do a lot of work in state. So those things all factor in. That's look, if there was 4 or 5 Division I AA schools in Ohio, Mount Union doesn't win 10 straight national titles.
Right.
Because half their roster would have been on scholarship at the 1AA. I mean, they were legit FCS caliber football players. And they would have been on full rides. Oh, William & Mary's another one. I forgot about William & Mary.
Oh, yeah.
Is another really good, and I got recruited by William & Mary when I went to my visit there. Their best player was Darren Sharper, who played in the NFL for a long time. So, yeah, thank you, VW804, my Virginia guy, right? He's up there. He's up in the Richmond area, I would believe. But, yeah, that's another scholarship program that's right there that's got – and a lot of those schools have great academics. UVA's got great academics. William & Mary's got great academics. Richmond's got really good academics. Virginia Tech has some really good programs that are very good in academics. So there's just a lot of different – it's a small state and a lot of different options. Then you go down to Georgia, and it's like what? You've got the Georgia Southern, Georgia State, Georgia Tech, and Georgia. And then after that, it's like there's Savannah State, and then there's not a lot of other options. So a lot of those kids will go up north to go to school somewhere. And then same thing with Florida. There's just not as many options. So when you look at Florida, it's Florida, Florida State, Miami, and you got like Florida Tech, Florida National, Florida Atlantic, and then I think there's a couple D2, and then there's nothing else.
South Florida.
This is a state that's 3 times as big as Indiana from a population standpoint. South Florida, UCF, right there. There's basically as many scholarship programs in the state of Florida for football as there are in Virginia and Ohio, and it's a way bigger state.
Right.
So a lot of those kids matriculate up north to go play football.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's
definitely geography. I mean, that geography is a big part of college recruiting, man. It's a big part of it. It's a huge part of it.
Yeah. So good stuff, man. Oh, Hampton University is another one. I completely forgot about Hampton, who's had really good back in the day with Coach Taylor. Like that, Hampton's another one. So I mean, you're talking about like almost 10 programs of Division I football, and then you wonder why the Virginia teams aren't competing for championships anymore, like they used to.
Because they're getting not watered down, but
it's just not as many kids.
Exactly.
It's just not, and it's harder to go out of state for some of those guys. So yeah, it's good stuff. Good stuff. Good conversation, Muhammad. I appreciate that.
John A1, assuming Mitchell, Collins, Greathouse, Thomas have already locked into the 6-man rotation, who are the top 3 contenders for the last 2 spots? Faison would be one.
Faison for sure. KK Smith for sure. And because you're saying 3 for the 2 and then Jaden Harrison. Well, actually, I don't even think you go there. You have to throw Micah Gilbert in there.
Yeah.
There's really 4 guys competing for 2 to 3 spots. I think they could go to 7.
I think they could go to 7 too. And I think they may have kind of a package situation too, where, they may take that 7th guy and make him part of a package.
Maybe when they go 12 personnel, Micah Gilbert's the boundary guy in 12 personnel.
Exactly.
I'm just throwing that out there.
Right.
I don't have a clue if that's the case.
They lined up
in
3 wide receivers all day today. When they had the offense.
I'm just using that as an example.
Yeah.
Or when they go 21 personnel, they want to do something different.
Right.
And then you'll have a speed package.
Sure.
You may go we would call it like 11 speed.
Yep.
Or you'd call it NASCAR. Some people call it all types of different things,
sure.
Right? And what that means is we're going 11 personnel, but we've dictated that when we go 11, these 3 players are the 3 receivers we want on the game. Right. We may go 11 big or 12 big, right? And so we don't just go 12. You just whoever the rotation is, whoever my starters are. We go 12 big. I want my 2 6'4" guys out there.
Right.
There's things you can do like that as well, Vince, to your point, to back up Vince's point, that there's packages where you say, hey, look, we want to make sure when we go, NASCAR, whatever, we want KK, Chris Mitchell, and Jaden Harrison on the field, right? Something like that, and we're going to go fast.
Yeah.
And we're going to have, 3 guys that run low 4.4s or high 4.3s on the field, something like that. I'm just, throwing out names.
Yeah, right.
Hey, when we go big, I want Miles, I want Bo Collins on one side of the field. I want him over here on one side, and I want Jaden Thomas on the other side, or I want Micah Gilbert or something like that. Exactly.
So find a way to the field, which I think is actually a good idea, but they just won't be part of the quote unquote rotation where you're going to see them on a constant basis.
And they may still be there at times, but that's a way to guarantee that you can get more guys on the field, to where at least I know we're getting him in there in that situation.
Exactly. Which could pay dividends, obviously, this year, but then also down the road if it's a young guy like a Micah Gilbert.
They tried to play a lot more guys last year. The problem is there just was no method to the madness.
Exactly.
None. It was just randomly in the middle of a series, they would rotate.
Made no sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, that was, I think they have a little bit, I think they're, from what I'm told, they're going to be a little bit more strategic with that kind of thing this year.
Which makes perfect sense. Yeah. D-Troll Hunter, let's talk about conditioning. How's everyone holding up in general? Not asking for unreported injuries, just curious. It seems to be better than the past few years.
Vince, I mean, again, it's day 3. You don't really start seeing guys drop off until usually closer to day 5.
Yeah. Like late next week when we start getting, it's like when you start off, there's nobody on the bikes. Right.
Those are just about pre-existing injuries.
Exactly. Like
Kahano Kia tore his ACL.
Right.
Quentin Autry's coming off a shoulder surgery. And then there was one other guy, Jabron Payne, who tore his ACL.
Right. But generally, as camp goes on, that group tends to grow. With some
4 guys on the bike, 4 guys over there doing other stretches, 4 guys on bands, and it's like
exactly that group tends to grow just a little bit. So we'll find out more, because I think our availability ends at the end of next week or close to it, and so it'll grow. It always does, But that also, Brian, I also want to say this: that's not exactly an indicator of lack of conditioning either. It's just camp. I mean, those are camp injuries, some soft tissue stuff, some, wear and tear, things like that. That's not necessarily a conditioning thing. You're not really going to get a good nose, or at least we won't, for conditioning purposes until, 3rd, 4th quarter down in Texas. Let's see what they look like. You know what I mean? Like, that's going to be the first indicator for me as to what the conditioning is like for these players, because we're not there for an entire practice to see what they look like at the end, and so everybody's fresh for the first 20 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just being honest. Everybody's fresh, so.
Well, and that kind of ties into the next question from John A1. He says, what is your current impression of the early impact Lauren Landau has had, seeing Jalen Snead at 210 plus, seeing Wagner physically ready to play, etc. Part one of my answer to this question is kind of what Vince said. I'm not worried about it. I can't tell you right now, like if they don't look great physically, and if they're not relatively healthy by the end of the 3rd day, you've got a major problem. Or
Agreed.
You had a lot of guys that got hurt that they're coming off like spring injuries or something like that, right? Major problem. So I've never seen a fall camp where like 3rd day you've got a million guys out for Notre Dame, except since Bayless arrived. Remember, there'd be like all these heat exhaustion and guys out of shape. Remember that before he came here?
They were taking off pads.
The heat tent was always filled with dudes in the first couple days.
Yes.
Because they just weren't in great shape. And it was always linemen because they just weren't in great shape.
Yep.
That's not an issue for this group.
Nope.
We just haven't seen that. So, but like with Jalen Snead and Emil Wagner coming into it, like, I don't know how much of that I can attribute to Lauren Landau yet on day 3, because they're juniors now. Like, if you're a strength coach that should even warrant a salary, those guys should be physically ready to go now. It's where a strength coach makes his money is limiting soft tissue injuries and stamina, endurance, and explosiveness. It's too early to really evaluate those things. Now, I've heard great things. So I'm not trying to poo-poo on Coach Landau. I just don't want to give you guys false hype about, oh, they look great through 3 days as scholarship athletes at Notre Dame. Lauren Landau's the greatest ever. I don't want to do that either. I want to say, look, let's set a realistic standard. How do they handle the heat at Texas A&M? That's going to tell me how good of a job Lauren Landau's done with conditioning. That's exactly. A lot of it's going to be on him. You know, how do they handle, how many do we see 12 guys at different times go out with hamstring injuries this year at skill position? That's going to be a big thing on Coach Landau. That's what happened last year. There's a problem last year. How does this team handle November? Are they fresher? Are they still fast? Those are the things that you evaluate whether a strength coach is doing a good job. If a guy doesn't have his team looking good, juniors, especially juniors and above, by the third day at campus, not only is he not a good strength, he doesn't deserve to have a job. And so, again, I'm not trying to poo-poo Coach Landau at all. I'm just trying to let you guys know. I know y'all are dying to hear how I'm just not going to lie to you. There's no way to evaluate how good he is after 3 days.
Right.
You just not. I mean, unless he's bad at his job. So I think we can say this. He's not bad at his job, Vince. I'm saying sarcastically because there aren't a lot of guys out with hamstring injuries. But to really know how good he's going to be, we need time and different trademarks. All I can tell you guys is this. The feedback from my sources within the program so far is very positive. Players seem to really like him. They seem to relate to him. That says a lot because the older players especially, were very fond of Matt Balis. Very fond of Matt Balis. Mm-hmm. So the fact that they've taken to Coach Landau is a good sign. It means he's commanded their respect with what he's doing. So the feedback's been great. The coaches, from what I've talked to, are really happy about the job he's done so far. That part's good. But as far as what we can see with our eyes, guys, like 3 days in, they look like Division I scholarship athletes at Notre Dame. Okay, great. Mm-hmm. That's as much recruiting as it is anything else. You know what I mean? Like, God has a whole lot more to do, and Sullivan Absher's parents' DNA has a whole lot more to do with what he looks like than what Coach Landau does. Now, if Sullivan Absher continues to get bigger and stronger and more athletic and his endurance is great, then I can give that to Coach Landau, right? Like, God in the Young family DNA is why Bryce Young looks the way he looks like, not necessarily Coach Landau. Now, if he gets faster, more explosive, his endurance takes off, and he's able to stay healthy, that's where you give Coach Landau, right? If he can maximize those God-given tools. So 3 days in, guys, these are Notre Dame scholarship football players and the recruiting impact is showing now.
Yes.
Let's just be patient. And we'll have our standard. Because if I tell you guys right now, oh, man, Lauren Landau's doing a phenomenal job. And in the fourth quarter against A&M, Notre Dame is gassed. Man, Driscoll, you are so full of it. You told us that Landau was the best strength coach since whatever. And I'm just they look great. They look like elite scholarship athletes at Notre Dame. I'm sure this is probably what it looked like when you covered Lou Holtz back in the day. Just athletes everywhere, depth of athletes. That's how it's supposed to be. I promise you this is what it would look like if you and I were covering Ohio State.
Yeah.
Or Georgia or Alabama or Texas. Like, man, these are big athletic kids, right? I mean, great. Those are the how we're going to know if Lauren Landau is doing the job is going to start August 31st.
Correct.
And then certain benchmarks throughout the season. That's what's going to tell us if he's doing a good job.
Yep.
Not anything we're seeing the first 3 days.
Check in the fourth quarter, Texas A&M, in the humidity and the heat of August 31st, and all the different things that people are super worried about. You're going to get your answer.
Yeah.
You're going to get your answer.
Now, one thing I will say that I think we can, at least early on, get a good signal of.
Okay.
There are some younger athletes that have really filled out. Jeremiah Love, Jalen Sneed, some of those type of guys. Jaden Greathouse, that seem to have gotten even faster as they filled out. More explosive they filled out. That is a very good, that's the only good early sign that I can give you that's actually some level of measurement. Because a lot of times when guys put on weight as athletes, they slow down. With Jeremiah Love, with Jaden Greathouse, with Jordan Faison even. Jordan Faison's a lot thicker this year, Vince, than he was last year. And it's not just because of the number. When I look at those type of guys, that sophomore class especially, and you see that they're all getting thicker, but they're even more explosive, that's a good sign. But there's a lot more to it than that. So I know that everybody's just thirsting for knowledge about certain things, guys, and I just don't want to lie to you or say something just because you want to hear it. I'm trying to give you guys honest, like, this is how, if you want to evaluate it, now's not the time, right? Wait until we get to here, and then we'll have a better sense of it. If Notre Dame's the better team in the fourth quarter against Texas A&M, then you can say, okay, this dude's doing something. This dude's doing something. If half your skill players aren't checked out with hamstring injuries by the middle of the season, then you'll know he's improved the strength program.
Right.
So those are the things that are more important. I just don't want to give you guys stuff because like it would be very easy for me to start saying things that sound wonderful and get you guys all excited and fired up and that it's just honestly but it's not, yeah.
It's not responsible reporting. That's the way I look at it. It's not responsible for us to be like, everything is wonderful. Yep. Everything is great. Like, yeah, everything's going according to plan on day 3. That's what we can tell you. There's not oh my gosh, these guys all look like the Avengers when they walked out compared to like
some of them do.
Year.
But again, that's DNA more than anything. Right?
Like, and so I don't want to go overboard on the effect of Lauren Landau right now. I'm not prepared to do that. I know other people are. The effect is there. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe it is. But I need to see it in a game and as the season wears on and check back in with me in November. Let's see how they do, because there was a stark difference between November prior to Matt Balis and November during Matt Balis's tenure. That was a very viewable difference, right? Mm-hmm. Let's see what it looks like.
Yep.
Let's see what it looks like. That's where I'm at with the whole strength and conditioning.
The other thing too is these guys did not step in. Like, you could see a lot earlier under Balis because he inherited such a bad situation.
Absolutely. 100%.
That's not necessarily the case with what Lauren Landau stepped in.
Agreed.
Got a super chat, Vince.
Zibby94, thanks for the super chat. Looking at the talent, size, and athleticism, how many schools in the country are Notre Dame still behind? Who and how far behind?
Well, I think there's still some positions. Safety's one where I still think I think that might change when next year's the 25 safety class shows up with Bronte, when you get Jadon Blair and Ethan Long on campus along with Bronte Johnson. That might be the case. But I think safety still needs an uptick in athleticism compared to the Georgias, the Ohio States. And you look at Ohio State's going to have Lathan Ransom and Caleb Downs at safety this year. Now, Notre Dame safety group's going to be very good, but they're not as big and they're not as explosive athletically as that group. They may be better football players or as good of football players. We'll find out, but there's a step behind there. I think areas where Notre Dame has made up a ton of ground: linebacker, wide receiver, running back. I don't know that there's a more explosive running back room in the country. I want to see it. There may be more productive, maybe, but when we talk about athleticism, I mean, Notre Dame's not taking a back seat to anybody when it comes to athleticism at running back. They're not taking a back seat to anybody when it comes to pound for pound athleticism, a linebacker. I mean, Jack Kaiser is one of the better athletes in college football, a linebacker, in my opinion. Now, can he play inside? That's a completely different question, because your question, Zibby, was talent, size, athleticism. That group's not taking a back seat to anybody. Notre Dame's corners, they're in the top group. I mean, they're absolutely in that conversation. Notre Dame still has to get better up front, defensively. There's still another level to get to where they have the same size athleticism combination as a Georgia, as a Bama, as programs like that. But the programs that I think right now that talent, size, athleticism are ahead of Notre Dame, probably still Georgia. Bama would have been if they didn't lose so many guys to the portal. Maybe Bama, but I don't even think Bama's there anymore, really. I mean, look, we watched Notre Dame play Ohio State last year. Ohio State was the better team that day because they won. Right? But Notre Dame didn't lose that game because they weren't big enough or athletic enough to hang with Ohio State. I mean, Notre Dame's corners shut down the number 4 overall draft pick again, because they shut him down again the year before that. Right? I mean, and Ohio State did a good job of shutting down certain parts of the Notre Dame team. They didn't lose because they weren't athletically good enough. They didn't execute in the clutch. Ohio State's guys executed when it mattered. Notre Dame's guys didn't. I mean, that was the difference in those two teams. The year before, it was different because you're like, they don't have him on the field that Stroud kid's the best guy on the field. Like, that was different. That was not true against Ohio State this past year. Not because Ohio State's not good, just because Notre Dame's really good. They're very good too. So it just comes down to just a couple of those spots I think that you could stand to get a little bit better. And I think the depth of athleticism needs to get better. So, receiver, there's still a need for an uptick in receiver, especially guys that they actually recruit out of high school. Notre Dame's, if you take away the portal class, this receiver core doesn't look as good. I'm excited about Jaden Greathouse and hopefully KK Smith, but you're counting on some guys. You're just like, Deion, come on, man, let the light go on, brother.
Right. But he's not even in the conversation right now.
The portal has really rescued some recruiting woes from the past 5 years.
Yeah.
That's an area where they've still got it. Now, last year's class is a big step in the right direction with Micah Gilbert and Cam Williams and Logan Saldate. You've got to continue to build on that. And right now, they're not in the 25 class. They're not. They got to do better there.
Right.
So that's a position where high school recruiting has to still get a lot better. Running back recruiting, I'll stack Notre Dame's running back recruiting the last 3 years up against anybody. Corner recruiting, I'll stack Notre Dame's corner recruiting up against anybody. Linebacker recruiting, I'll stack Notre Dame's linebackers up against anybody. O-line, tight end, and then recently quarterback. Even if some things happen that we expect to happen over the next week or two, I'll still look. You give me C.J. Carr, Noah Grubbs in a 3-year stretch, that's better than Notre Dame's in a long time. Right? So there's still some positions where they got to get better, but overall they have closed the gap significantly at a lot of positions. Not there yet. Edge, defensive end, got to be more consistently good. That's not an area that I think they're recruiting as well as some of the other top programs.
That I agree.
They get their Bryce Young, and they're hoping that some Logan Thomas is, pan out and things like that. But they're just not recruiting that position at the same elite level other programs are. It's got to get better. It's getting there, but like some position, like Mike Mickens is doing this. Like, here's the gap, here's the standard when Mike Mickens arrived, and here's where Notre Dame was. And in 3 years, it's gaps closed. It's like it's done.
Right.
Like
Agreed.
Lance Taylor started it, and then Dylan McCullough's built on it. But running back, gaps closed. Tight end, they were the gap setters there. O-line, linebacker, it was here, and then it's been closed. It's not closed at receiver. It's not completely closed at quarterback. It's not closed at safety. It's not closed at defensive tackle or defensive end. Those are positions where they still have work to do to get top to bottom the depth chart to where some of those other top programs are, in my opinion. So how do you feel about that eventually?
Yeah, the defensive line is the major area for me. Look, Notre Dame has one of the best defensive lines, interior defensive lines in the country this year, but it's not because of how they recruited. It's how they developed these guys. You know what I mean? Those weren't come in day one. Hey, these are 5-star guys. So
and COVID helped because if it's not for COVID, they don't have Howard Cross or Riley Mills on this year's roster.
Completely agree. And so they need to get better at getting those top quality guys in here. Not they got to keep developing. Yes, they got to keep developing.
Right.
That still has to happen. And I'm happy with where the development is, to be perfectly honest with you. But I need more. I need more. So that if I was going to pick an area, that would be the biggest one for me.
So we have a question from Muhammad Abdi, Vince, and this is kind of building off on the Northern football thing.
Oh, okay.
So this is more of a, talking about how the Southern, North doesn't do as well at the FBS level, this, that, and the other. So let's, I think this actually is an interesting conversation. So basically, his question was, do you think 12 to 14 team playoff changes the fact that the South is dominated the playoff? What's your gut takeaway on that, Vince?
No, I don't think it changes it. I think you might get a couple more Northern teams into the playoff, and that's fine. But I don't know that you will have consistent dominance or whatever by a Northern team. And again, you rattle, Michigan, Ohio State, Notre Dame, those are all Northern teams, right? And so I think they will continue to have success. They will continue to make the playoff, and that's 2 to 3 Northern teams in the playoff every year, and then you could potentially throw in a Washington, for example, or, somebody along those lines, and they could make it into the playoff as well. And so I don't know that it is going to change drastically. Look, the majority of the big time talent overall is always going to flock SEC in the South. It just is. Now, the Big Ten is still maybe top to bottom. You can make an argument. Maybe they're better than the SEC, from one year to the next. That's cool. I have no problem with that. But the talent is down there, and kids, for the most part, and this is a generality, but it's still fairly true, kids like to stay closer to home overall. And that's number one. It's what they grew up with. Okay. Number two, they just want to be closer to their family. They want their families to come watch them play on a regular basis. And unless you're getting a $1 million signing bonus, which I get people are, but are they going to spend that on flying their parents to every game? You know what I mean? So being closer to home makes a difference. And again, it's not like that for everybody, but I still feel like that is still, no matter what happens in the college football landscape, at the end of the day, we're still talking about kids and families and things of that nature. And the majority of kids are still going to want to be closer to home than not. I don't see that changing. I just don't.
So my facial expression was something that someone in the chat said.
No, you're good.
Some non-Notre Dame fans said something kind of
nuts. Gotcha.
In the chat. I actually disagree with you, Vince. Depending on how the playoff committee is, if they just load up with Southern teams, like SEC gets half the college football playoff spots, then okay, it won't change. I think a big problem that we've seen in the past is just teams from the North haven't gotten the same opportunities. Every time there's been 3 undefeated teams, and one of those teams is Penn State. Penn State doesn't get a chance to play for the title. The Southern teams do, right? We've seen that happen before. And I think and this has been true for a long time, that there's certain leagues Nebraska used to get the benefit of the doubt at times, right? And Southern teams would get sort of the benefit of the doubt at times. And I believe that a playoff allows greater opportunities. I mean, there's been years, I think probably 2015, if there's a 12-team playoff, if there's a 4-team playoff in 2015, right? Ohio State doesn't get in, which there was because they got beat late. You put that Buckeye team in 2015 in a 8 to 12 team playoff or a 12 to 14 team playoff, and they get pissed off because they got a low seed and they didn't win the Big Ten and all that kind of stuff, because that was a pissed off Buckeye team against Notre Dame. That's a really good Notre Dame team that they made look kind of average that day. That team was insanely loaded. You let that team get in the college football playoff, we don't have Bama versus Clemson in the national title game. Like, that's been my big beef, is like, there's always the benefit of the doubt being given to certain leagues. We saw that this year when Bama got in and Florida State didn't. That was bullcrap, in my opinion. And because we saw Bama against a playoff team this year, and they got their butts kicked at home by Texas. Florida State deserved that chance to be in there. Now, Florida State would get that chance to go do it. So I think what you're going to see is, we see it. I mean, how many times have you seen Wisconsin go to a bowl game when they were really good and go toe-to-toe with some SEC team? And you're like, dang. And you're like, I didn't realize this. Or some ACC team gets matched up against a team, and you're like, wow, that team's actually pretty good. Happens all the time. Mm-hmm. Well, now you're going to see that. Now those conferences in the Big Ten especially is going to get a chance to say, let's see that Penn State versus LSU matchup. Let's see that Penn State versus Georgia matchup, or that Michigan versus whoever matchup, or Ohio State versus whoever matchup. Those teams are going to get that shot now. And I think that's going to result in a few more upsets than people think. Not 12 team making a run to number 1, but that first round game between number 7, so-and-so SEC team against number 10, so-and-so Northern Big Ten team. You're going to be a little surprised when that team comes down there and kicks your butt, because you were overrated. You got the SEC benefit of the doubt, or the big, the Southwest benefit of the doubt. Oklahoma's great. They're so great. No, they're not. And they're going to show you. So I actually think the Northern opportunities in the expanded playoff are going to get more chances to get in there and say, hey, we're going to do something. And then maybe it doesn't result in, Penn State winning a title, but maybe Penn State knocks off a team that people thought was going to go win a title, and then that opens up for somebody else. So I actually do think that an expanded playoff gives more opportunities to some of the non-SEC schools to go make a run. Because, there's years, Vince, so there's 2 SEC schools in the playoff. Well, they got a pretty good chance of winning it this year. Half the dang tournament's their teams. And so I think that's going to change a little bit when you get expanded. Because, like I said, there's teams I'm like, man, I really wish that 2015 Notre Dame team would have had a shot to play in a 12-team tournament. I wish that 2017 Notre Dame team would have had a shot to play in a 12-team tournament. You know what I mean? Could you imagine Notre Dame's 17 team, once they made the quarterback switch, the way Ian Book played in the second half against LSU before he kind of turned into, now he's thinking about it? I'd like to see that team do something. I've heard Miami people say, well, man, if there was a playoff back in 1988, Notre Dame might not have won a title. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. But I promise you that Notre Dame would have won one in 1989 if they'd have got that rematch on a neutral field against Miami. So we can do this dance all day. Notre Dame's had several teams. I'm like, I wish they could have played in the playoff. You know what I mean? And they're going to get that shot now, in my opinion. And back in the day, we saw some of those teams not get that opportunity, and that won't be the case now. So, like, I mean, how many times did Michigan or Ohio State knock each other out? Not one of those teams get knocked out. I'm like, well, that team was pretty good, but they just couldn't beat. Could you imagine like the Eddie George 1995 Ohio State team in a playoff? Yeah, they couldn't beat Michigan, but they beat everybody else. You know what I mean? Like, could you imagine that? I think the North would have a much different view if there was more plays. And I'm not saying that I'm a big fan of the playoff, Vince. You know, I would much rather go back to the old bowl system. I would much rather do that than give me a 4-team playoff after that. I still believe in that. But I do think because of the bias towards the SEC that a expanded playoff is going to give these Northern teams more opportunities to show, hey, we are as good as you. Well, there's no, hey, we never got our shot. You're getting your shot now. You're getting your shot now. Go prove it. Hey, Oregon, you don't feel you got your opportunity playing in the Pac-12. You thought you should have had some teams that should have been in the playoff. Okay, you get your shot now. You get to play in the Big Ten, and if you're good enough in the Big Ten, you get a chance to go play in a playoff game where maybe, now you're the number 5 seed. Now you got a chance to go do something, and so I think that's going to give those teams more opportunities, in my opinion, to go show that, hey, we are better than the media thinks that they are because the SEC is this. Because I've pointed this out before, Vince. I didn't do it for the last couple of years, but I would go through and I'd go look at the all-pro teams, and the number of SEC kids on the all-pro teams is always lower than what was being drafted in the first 2 rounds because they would get overdrafted. And then some kid from Iowa who's a 3rd-round pick becomes an all-pro, or some kid from Cal that got drafted in round 1 or 2 that comes out and he's a good player. And, I mean, you saw now, I think Notre Dame tied for 2nd behind Bama with like Ohio State and LSU for most players in the top 100 in that NFL.com top 100 players list. Well, there's a lot more talent coming out of the North, and there's a lot more better teams coming out of the North, which is why they tend to have some matchups. You're like, wow, I didn't think that team had a shot to beat that team. So I think it's going to help them. I do. I'm sure a lot of people in the chat, I haven't looked, I'm sure a lot of people in the chat are going to disagree with me on that, but I do absolutely believe that.
I just generally enjoy disagreeing with you, so that's why I do it so often. I'm going to stick with it.
We know that's not true. Oh, my goodness. All right, let's get to some more questions.
D-Troll Hunter, Tombstone or Top Gun? Which would you be putting on your Friday night movie?
Well, it depends on what I'm looking for. Am I looking for a better story? Tombstone. I mean, Tombstone's the better movie from the standpoint of what's a better, acted and character development and those type of things. It's Tombstone, in my opinion. I thought that was a great movie. What's the more entertaining movie? It's Top Gun. That's kind of how I look at it. So it depends on what am I looking to get out of it on a Friday night. Am I just looking to be entertained? Probably Top Gun.
Yeah.
There's some periods of Tombstone that get a little bit like, okay. And then I'll fast forward to the lame scenes of Top Gun. But, it's like, Top Gun.
Yeah.
If I'm just being entertained, if I'm looking for like a good quality, get my popcorn, watch a good, well put together movie, Tombstone. That'd be my take, Vince. Well, how about you?
It's an interesting take. For me, my gut instinct was Top Gun right off the bat. I enjoyed Tombstone when I watched it. Tombstone for me is kind of a one and done watch. I don't get the popcorn out for movies I've already seen. Mm-hmm. I want to watch new movies that I can get into. That's where I'm at.
Tombstone's a great movie. So. That's Val Kilmer's rendition of Doc Holliday is one of the best acted parts. I mean, he was phenomenal.
Oh, it's really good.
He was so good in that movie. I almost didn't recognize Billy Bob Thornton in that movie.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, because he was so much bigger then.
Yeah.
And that was a very well done movie. Very well done. I liked it a whole lot better than I liked Wyatt Earp. I did not like Wyatt Earp. The movie Kevin Costner and Dennis Quaid. I did not. It was way too long. And I like long movies. Like, I'm okay with long movies, but that one was just way too long.
I hear you.
I was not a big fan of that movie at all. And the thing for Dennis Quaid might have done a good job with Wyatt Earp. I might have thought that, but Val Kilmer had already set the standard, and you're like, you're not living up to that.
And I like Dennis Quaid. I think he's a good actor. I actually really like a lot of Dennis Quaid movies in general. But that one fell short for me too.
Val Kilmer ruined any chance he had at being real, that being a memorable part for him.
Yeah,
certainly.
Agreed. That's an easy agreement. Can't disagree with you. All right, John A1, what is your current read on how Joe Rudolph would rank values more between experience, talent, and assignment consistency.
Well, so far, I would rank 1 to 3 for what we've seen from him. Experience, assignment consistency, and talent. That's what I've seen. I would say I would probably flip 1 and 2 if it was up to me. I do value experience in the offensive line very much. It just can't be a trump card over everything else. That's my issue. If I have 2 guys that are somewhat equal, one guy's more talented, the other guy has way more experience and tech assignment consistency, I'm playing the veteran with the more assignment consistency. My issue is that it's been like the talented guy is here in talent, the other guy's here in talent, and then there's there's a gap, and the gap between consistency and experience is here, and he would go with the more experienced guy. Like, there was no excuse to play Pat Coogan over Billy Schrouth as long as they did last year. None.
And just because you set your depth chart at the beginning of the year doesn't mean you just stick with it the entire season.
Right.
That's the other part. I felt like they were married to the depth chart no matter what happened, unless there was an injury that them out. That's how I
forced them to kind of get some guys on the field, and you're like, wow,
exactly.
These guys are pretty good.
Yeah, right.
But some would lead us to believe, Vince, that actually Billy Schrouth and Ashton Craig weren't ready to play until miraculously the week of the Wake Forest game, they just figured it out.
Crazy.
It just so happened to coincide with the injuries that happened against Clemson.
Isn't that amazing? It's awesome the way things work out.
Yeah. Yep. No doubt.
D-Troll Hunter, who is your left guard leader after 3 days?
No, stay with the plan. There's no leader. You don't know. You don't overthink it.
Nope.
I mean, I've seen more impressive plays from Rocco, but honestly, for us, we've seen 1 full practice with no pads. I couldn't possibly, if I were to give you an answer, it would be my biased.
Yes.
I think this guy's better. Right.
Absolutely.
So I know when I have a bias, I can identify, okay, I think Rocco should be the starting left guard. I've said that.
Yep.
So I can't give you a different answer because we have not seen a single team period with pads on. So I honestly can't tell you. I think Rocco's more impressive looking, but I don't know who's doing better in run periods. I don't know who's doing better in team periods because we've only seen the one without pads on. So I honestly can't tell you.
I would have felt much better. Like, for example, if I saw all day today when they were in pads the entire day, I guarantee they started hitting a little bit more as the practice wore on. More so than we would have been able to see from a lineman standpoint on Wednesday, right? Because they weren't in pads. We saw 20 minutes of them in pads, right? And they were hitting other offensive linemen in drill work.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's just not enough information to make that call. So yeah, I agree with you on that part. Is you stick with the plan. You rotate, you give equal reps, and you analyze the practice film once it's all done, and you make that decision. Maybe the end of next week, depending, unless one guy just starts running away with it, then you can make that decision a little bit earlier. But at the end of the day, you keep giving them equal reps and you see who comes out on top.
Right. Pat Coogan has earned the right to be given more than a day.
Right. Look, they both started last year. They were both starters at the beginning of the season. They both earned the right to battle equally for
at least a week.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Absolutely. BK's last brain cell. What would your lineup 3rd and 6 at Florida State? Oh, at the Florida State 45, down by 4, 1:15 left to play with 1 timeout.
Quarterback Riley Leonard, running back 3rd and 6 at the 45, Jeremiah Love, or Keedron Young, if Keedron has figured out how to pass block because he's a big old boy that I could leave in there. My receivers would be Bo Collins, Jaden Greathouse, and probably Jaden Thomas on 3rd and 6. Just got to move the chains, right? We're at the 45-yard line. We need 1 more first down before we can start talking about being in field goal range. Actually, no, down 4. So yeah, we got it. We got to move the chains.
We got to score.
We got 2 downs to move the chains. I'm putting my most efficient route runners, my guys who know how to get open on the field. Now, if we move the chains and get that first down, Chris Mitchell comes back in and we're ready to maybe take a shot down the field. But on 3rd and 6, I need guys that can get open. And then of course Mitchell Evans a tight end. That'd probably be my 4. Now you could say, hey, Bo Collins and Jaden Greathouse and then Chris Mitchell. I'm okay with that. Maybe you want to take the top off the coverage and maybe take a safety with you. You think that'll open up a conversion opportunity? That's fine. All for that. But I would definitely have Bo Collins, Jaden Greathouse, and Mitchell Evans on the field.
You know what? And a lot of it has to do with maybe the flow of the game too. Who has, they do have a lot of top end talent, in my opinion, at the wide receiver position. So who's kind of got the hot hand that day? Who's having a day that might infiltrate my thought process a little bit. Who are they having trouble guarding? You know what I mean? Like, what is there a matchup that we've been exploiting all game long that, hey, man, we're going back to the well? That's something that I would think about too. But I like what you came up with, just not having any of that kind of information, just kind of going into it cold and what we know about these guys. I'm totally cool with that too. I'd let my veterans and the guys that have done it do it.
For me, it's not so much veterans because I got Jaden Grace out. It's just those are the 3 best guys that I know right now know how to get open. I mean, Jaden Greathouse knows how to get open. Jaden Thomas knows how to get open. And Bo Collins did that on this type of situation last year. Clemson's on a drive. They were close to the end zone on that play, but it was like 3rd and 5, and he goes out there and beats Benjamin Morrison on the slant route to move the chains, gets him inside the 15-yard line. And so he knows how to get open. Jaden Greathouse knows how to get open. Jaden Thomas knows how to get open. Now the other thing to consider is like, okay, well, you could also say, well, let's put our fast guys on the field, Faison, KK, and Chris Mitchell, because we got some guys can maybe do something after the catch to move the chain. That's a good argument to make too. But that's the thing where I think this team is different, Vince, because you do have more options and different types of playmakers. And what kind of defense are you playing? Zone? If you're playing zone, I think, Vince, you would agree with me that you'd go with probably the 3 that I talked about if you're going against zone, right?
Right.
A good route, your smart guys. If you're playing man, okay, I may want to go with my fast guys that can outrun people and get open. Okay. So there's a lot of things that factor into that. That's why these questions are always like, normally, I'm usually like, I need more detail. You know what I mean? Like, Absolutely. But here you're playing Florida State. They tend to have, they're not as big in the DB, in the DB room. They tend to be able to run with you. So I don't know if I can outrun you on 3rd and 6, but I can outthink you on 3rd and 6. And I would, and if I feel like they're in a heavy blitz situation, I would also, here's the other thing too, why I like the idea that those 3 guys on the field, 3rd and 6, if they're going to bring pressure on 3rd and 6, I might have some screen stuff drawn up for Jeremiah Love on 3rd and 6. And I want my big receivers out there leading the way. And let's see if we get Jeremiah in space. Because you're in 2-down territory, Vince, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yep.
So, to me, there's 2 types of take a shot. One is you take a shot. The other one is let me see if I can get my dude in space and see if we can get him free. That would be the other one. And I'd want my big guys out there blocking for him on that particular play.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that too. A lot of things you can do. Oh, we got a new one. John A1. Do you believe Marty Biaggi will be creative in punt execution this year with a new punter with unique abilities? Can I start this one off?
Of course.
People are going way overboard, in my opinion, with all the things you can do with James Rendell at punter. I just want him to punt the ball.
You only feel that way because you didn't see the first practice.
I want him to punt the ball.
I'm kidding.
Yeah, I just want him to punt the ball. That's it. I don't need him running up behind center and doing a QB sneak. I don't like. He's lined up 14 yards behind the line of scrimmage. You snap him the ball, you got to get another 14 yards plus whatever you need to do to get a first down.
I wonder if what John's referring to here has more to do with the types of coverages you can do. Like
that's fine. I have no problem with that. Okay, cool. But as far as asking James Rendell to do what he's getting a scholarship to do, it's kick the football, get some massive hang time, allow your guys to cover, and don't allow a return. Like, that's his job. That's all I want him to do. I don't need him coming in and carrying the football because he's got an Australian rules background or anything like that. That's not necessary. I would actually be like, don't do that. You've got a good enough team around you. You don't need to be cute. You don't need to be cute. I'm sorry. Just execute the play. That's it. That's all I need you to do. So there's my rant.
And if you're going to do something unique on punt, it's going to be, I'm getting the ball in the hands of a football player.
You snap it to Jeremiah Love like they did last year,
or do like the jet they did to Braden Lindsey.
Yes,
South Carolina,
100%. Like I don't know, what kind of arm he has or anything like that. No, just let him do what he does. He got a scholarship because he can boom the crap out of the ball apparently and get like 5.0 hang time and allow his guys to go down there and cover. That's all I want him to do, man. If he can do that, beautiful, man. Special teams player, coach of the year. That's all you need to do.
Yep.
So I've just heard some people talking about just craziness that they want him to do just because he's a big dude, and his background and all that.
Gotta get the ball to Thor, man. What's wrong with you, Vince?
Yeah. Like, God, stop the madness. Anyway, Quinn Kibler with a question. Anyone else insanely confused on practice jersey colors for offense and defense?
First game of the year is on the road.
Correct.
Offense almost always wears the color of the jersey you're going to have on the road.
It just so happens that
Literally
most of the time
simple.
Notre Dame's at home, first game of the year, and so the offense is usually in blue.
Really that simple.
When I walked in, I did a double take. I'm not going to lie to you.
Yeah, first day, because I'm just used to what it was. But like as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. They're starting on the road this year. Makes sense.
Offense usually wears the color that the team is going to wear. So, absolutely.
So, no, not confused by it.
But I get it, Quinn. I understand where you're coming from, dude. Judge Philip Banks, 2024. I love this, by the way. That is fantastic.
One of my favorite sitcom characters ever.
A little Fresh Prince action. I love that.
Uncle Phil was one of my favorite sitcom characters ever.
That's great.
I like strong dads. Like that's I like in movies. Yes. So, and he was certainly that.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Anyway, the question for both of you covering Notre Dame or watching as fans, which seasons did you most and least accurately predict?
I got this one's pretty easy for me. The one I predicted best was 2016. Vince, I mean, you remember that.
100%.
I was screaming from high heavens that there's problems here. Like the whole off.
I thought you were crazy to a degree. Yeah. Like you were telling me all the stuff. I was like, really?
Yeah. I was like this team, maybe they figure it out and they get it all together. But and I said on Bill King's show, I said this team is either going to figure it all out and be really good, or they're going to implode. And they imploded.
Yeah.
The team I really thought that 09 team was going to be the bounce back year for Weiss because they had so much NFL talent on that team. So much NFL talent on that team. And it looked like I was going to be right. I mean, if you really go back and think about that 09 season, Vince, they come out in the opener against Nevada and they blast Nevada.
Yes, they did.
And then they came out against Michigan early in that game and looked really good. And you're like, okay, this team is figured it out. And then they blew that lead against Michigan, and you're just like, uh-oh, right? Like, because they fell behind Michigan early, and then they kind of came back, and they were really dominating Michigan for a minute, and then just peed that game away at the end of the game. And you're just like, how does this team lose that game? And then I'm trying to remember. Oh gosh, what else happened that year? But like Michigan State game, I think is when Michael Floyd got hurt, and that hurt them. They ended up winning 3 in a row. They're 4-1. You think they're going to figure it out, then they lose to USC. Fell behind early, battled back. Then they win their next 2, and if I remember correctly, they climbed in the top 25 a couple times that year. They're sitting there at 6-2, and they had climbed they were climbed up to number 22. They beat BC at home. If you remember, they played that first Shamrock game in San Antonio against Washington State, blew Washington State out, jumped in the top 25. And the next week they came home and lost to Navy, and it was over. It was over.
They lost 4 in a row.
Yeah, they lost to Navy. They lost to Pitt by 5. They lost in overtime at home to UConn, who had freaking Zach Frazier at quarterback, and then they lost on the road to Stanford. Like I really thought that team multiple times is going to figure it out and turn it around. I just really felt that team, and they couldn't. They weren't a great team. They were talented, but they weren't a great team. I really thought that team was going to be a lot better, because I'm looking at the schedule like, who are they going to lose to? Just talent. I mean, and who should they have? I mean, they should not have lost to Michigan. They should not have lost to freaking Tate 4CA. Should not have lost to Navy. Should not have lost to Pitt. Should not have lost to UConn. Should not have lost to Stanford. Schedule wasn't that hard that year. I mean, USC was really the only team you thought could match you talent for talent, and you got them at home.
Right.
And I got that team way wrong. Way wrong.
I will say I was very new, fairly new to the beat at the time. But after Charlie did what he did with Brady Quinn and Jeff Samardzija the first 2 years, I did not necessarily see the depths that they dropped to in 07. I mean, I knew that they weren't going to be a 10 to 11 win team, and I think we talked about this on a previous show. It's like you saw that they never practiced with the backups and things like that. And it was a red flag to me as a coach that they never worked with those guys ever. And so I knew they probably would take a step back. I didn't see 3-9 coming. I mean, I did not. You look at how that season played out. I mean, they didn't even win a game until October 6th against UCLA. I mean, I just didn't see that one coming. And they were getting smoke showed. I mean, they lost 3-33 against Georgia Tech. They lost by 21 to Penn State, 38-0 against Michigan, 2 scores against Michigan State.
They weren't competitive very often.
Oh, my God.
And let's be honest, the only reason they beat UCLA is because they played their third-string quarterback, and Notre Dame had like 2 defensives. Remember Mo Crum recovered a fumble inside the 5?
That's right.
And
they only won 20-6.
You know who played on that UCLA team?
Who's that?
Danny Reese.
Really?
Tommy Reese's older brother.
No
kidding.
He
was a punter and a holder for that team. But yeah, good guy. But like that team, Vince, was so bad.
I mean, way worse than I could
knew
have ever
they were going to
imagined.
struggle, Vince, but I thought like 8-4,
Right?
7-9. It just
Exactly.
That was before I really got started. That's when I was still evaluating the team as a fan.
Yeah, correct. I get
that's
that.
where I was back then. I evaluated the team as a fan, and when you start covering the team, you start looking at it. Okay, let me look at this as a coach. But yeah, 09 for me and 16. 09 worst, 16 nailed it. 09, yeah. I thought the 2018 team. I had a buddy said something to me before 18, and I completely agree with him. He goes, "If they can beat Michigan, they won't lose a game." And I was like, dude, you're right. I mean, like, that's how I felt about that team. So I think I got that team pretty nailed that team in a positive manner.
Yeah. I
think I nailed that team pretty good. And like at 17, I thought they were going to bounce back in 17, and they did. 19, they were about what I thought they were. 20, I had no clue what the team was going to be because of the COVID stuff. You had no clue how anyone was going to handle that offseason. 21, they actually won more games than I thought because the schedule was softer than I thought it was going to be. I thought the schedule in 21 I thought Wisconsin was going to be better. I thought they ended up with playing one good team all year, and they lost by 10. So, yeah.
Johnny 1. Now that Notre Dame is truly hoping to play 16 games, does Coach Freeman's philosophy of a 1A, 1B depth chart naturally more impactful?
Only if they use it. I mean, it's one thing to say it. They got to do it.
Good call.
And we started to see that at some positions last year. But honestly, in their defense of the coaches, I don't know that they were – yes, I would have liked to have seen them play Howard Cross and Riley Mills less in some of the games where they were blowing teams out. Okay. But at the end of the day, you can't take them off the field against Ohio State. Mm-hmm. You can't take them off the field against Louisville. You can't take them off the field against Duke because there was too big of a drop-off between them and the next guys. I mean, that just – you can go into it with all the plans in the world you want about, hey, we're going to, play a lot of guys, but how do you justify that when you're in a situation where there's a big drop-off and we're in a hotly contested game?
Right.
I mean, like Navy, Howard played 31 snaps. Riley played 31. Tennessee State, Riley only played 26. Howard only played 31. Central Michigan, it was 38 and 36. Pittsburgh, it was 25 and 36. Wake, it was 33 and 40. They played too much against Stanford, 42-49, but the reason they played that much against Stanford is because it was the last game of the year, and you weren't sure if either one of those guys were coming back next year.
Right.
So, and there's no bowl game. You don't play for a month. So, but, I mean, there's plenty of games where those guys didn't get a ton of reps. The problem is, Howard had 58 against NC State, 64 against Ohio State, 57 against Duke, 60 against Louisville, 55 against USC, 65 against Clemson. You cannot have your starting nose tackle playing 65 snaps a game. Riley was at 62 against Clemson. But it's at that point in time, it's like, well, you're down. You can't afford to give up another score. You got to keep your dudes on the field.
Right.
I think that the talent's better now. Like last year, it's like there was a big drop-off between J.D. Bertrand and Drake Bowen, who was a true freshman. Well, this year, I don't think there is this big of a drop-off between Drake as a sophomore and Kingston as a freshman, or even Jack Kaiser, now third-year version of Jalen Sneed, or Kingston, who's a special talent. There's not as big of a drop-off now between Riley and Jason Onye, or Riley and or Howard and maybe Donovan Heinisch, or before he was injured, Gabriel Rubio. There's not as big of a drop off between, like last year, Javonte Jean-Baptiste and Nana. There's a drop off. This year, it's like I don't know who's better, 1A or 1B at big end. Is it Burnham or is it Oben? Oh, and by the way, the number 3 guy is this cat named Bryce Young, who's 6'7", 250.
Yeah.
And might be one of your best pound for pound athletes on the football team.
Passes the eye test, by the way.
Yeah, he's him. Like if you know that whole get off the bus thing first,
there's a question about that in here.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Let's go down. Where is it starred?
I starred it, so it has to be towards
near the bottom.
Top.
Do you remember who did it?
I don't. It was the first 5 and the last 5 to get off the bus.
I mean, my last 5 are my specialists, not named James Rendell.
That's fair.
Right? Let me see if I can find it. Did you definitely star it? Let me find
100% did. I remember seeing it.
Let me find it here real quick, Vince. First 5 on the bus, first 5 off the bus. I don't see it starred here. Did I take it off? I don't think I did. I don't remember seeing it. All right.
Wish you could do like a search button on there, but
I know, right? Like if I could hit like Control F.
Yeah, right.
All right, so we'll just answer it. Who's your first 5 and on the bus, and who's your first 5 off the bus? My first 5 or the last 5. My first 5, it's like okay, it's going to be some combination of Bryce Young,
sure,
Riley Mills.
Riley Mills has to be one.
Charles Jagasaw.
Okay.
Eli Raridan.
Okay.
And Jadarian Price with a tank top.
Ooh.
Okay. That dude is yoked, right? I mean, that's probably my 5, right? Maybe Jeremiah Love. Because I need to get an athlete in there. Like, we got some good-looking athletes, too, My last 5 off the bus, it's Reno Monteforte.
He's so small.
I
just want to put my arm around him.
Zach Yoakum.
Hey, buddy.
You know what I mean? It's like,
what's his name?
Because Zach's your kickoff guy, right? He's there.
Jack Polian might be towards the back.
If he's traveling,
you know what I mean?
If he's traveling, yeah.
Oh, that's true. If we're talking travel roster, then the number shrinks.
Because I'm not worried about getting off the bus at home. I mean, at home, it's getting off the bus on the road, right?
Yeah.
I think of that scene from Necessary Roughness where they got to scrimmage the prisoners. Remember that?
Yeah.
Great scene. It's like a Vander Holyfield, Jack, it's like Jack Lambert, I mean. Hey, man, Coach, I think I swallowed a finger. It's great. I think Ed Too Tall Jones is in there, too. Right. That was awesome, man. I mean, we kind of last 5 off the bus. We mentioned those guys. It's the specialist. It's
it just is what it is,
It is.
Yeah, it just is what it is.
Maybe some skinny DB or receiver or something like that that
makes the Tress list.
Yep, that's pretty much where I'm at.
Yeah, that's pretty much
where I'm at. Yeah,
that's fair.
That's a fun one. That's good. It's really good. All right, let's get back up here to some more questions here, Vince.
BK's last brain cell. If Leonard struggles to push the ball downfield through 4 games and Minchie or Carr is excelling in practice, do you stick with Leonard or do you open up some snaps for the backup? No,
I mean, Riley Leonard is starting quarterback.
Yep, completely.
I mean, it may take him 4 games to really get in the flow of the offense. It may. I'm not abandoning that after 4 games. He's too good. No, that's no. And I'm not even thinking about that right now. Like it's not about if he struggles to push the ball down the field after 4 games. It's like he's got 7 turnovers through 4 games and he's just not leading and he's not that's the only way I would consider making that move. He'd have to make me make that move. Right. He's your quarterback.
Right.
You recruited him because he's the guy that gives you the best chance to win games right now. You don't abandon that after 4 games unless he's just awful. And that's never been right. I mean, there's been games when if you just watch the passing plays, like if you watch cut-ups of Riley Mills, you're like, dude, that guy struggled throwing the ball that game. Okay, now let me have you watch the entire game. And you're like, oh, dude, this guy's a playmaker. You know what I mean? And you're like, okay, that's why you do it. You don't abandon that after 4 games. You definitely don't abandon it. You definitely don't do that.
D-Troll Hunter, have you seen enough promise so far from the young guys to have more faith in Al Washington's ability to coach up the young talent he has on campus?
I mean, again, it's 3 practices, and we're seeing him do basic drills. I'm not saying Coach Washington hasn't. I mean, he's been very active, coaching a ton and all that, but we haven't been able to see anything. And today was the first day in pad, so it's way too early for that. Way too early for that. Like if we were able to see every practice, I would feel comfortable saying that like by the 15th.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. But I mean, look, he's working, he's coaching, he's on the guys, he's going instruction. It's good instruction. I was down there today listening to him talk and teach, and there was good instruction going on. So, and that's a positive, and they look great, but it's too early. It's too early for that if I were to try to be critical either. I mean, it's just too early to say one way or the other.
Right.
It was Tommy Guns. Here it is. First 5 and last
There you
5
go.
off. It was literally the third one from the top, Vince.
Of course,
So,
it was.
yeah, from
I told you it was in there,
yeah,
but
Tommy Guns. So we did get to that question, Tommy. So yeah.
That's fun. I knew we'd come across it.
I got one for you.
How
would Coach VD handle the situation as head coach of one side of the ball is going to year 3 into the coordinator compared to the other side in year 1?
Well, that's an interesting question because obviously the defense is going to be ahead of the offense to start, right? But in this particular situation, I don't know if he's asking generally, if he's asking about Notre Dame specifically. Speaking to Notre Dame specifically, you've also got a very experienced coordinator coming in Mike Denbrock, and that makes a big difference. If the new offensive coordinator was a new offensive coordinator, right? Like first-year offensive coordinator, like last year, then I think you have to kind of tell El Golden, hey, man, when we're going team, you kind of need to dial it back a little bit. You need to do some different things. But I feel like with Mike Denbrock, and yes, it's still a new offense to the kids, Mike Denbrock knows how to coach it, and he knows how to install it, and he knows how to get these guys where they need to be competitive in practice. Look, what we've seen, from what I understand from what we've seen in team, Al Golden's not holding anything back at this point, right? Now, he doesn't have everything installed either, okay? But he's bringing heat, he's bringing pressures, he's doing some different things, and I'm sure that some of the offensive guys, his heads are spinning, but that would be like it would be even if this was a third or fourth year coordinator. So I think at this point, Marcus Freeman is just letting his guys coach his guys. I think he's letting the coordinators coordinate, and he's not really intervening necessarily in this particular situation. If it was, like I said, a brand new offensive coordinator who's never coordinated before, then maybe I'm stepping in and I'm kind of maybe handling some things a little bit differently, scripting out maybe how I want the defense to go up against the offense. You give the offense some wins here and there to make sure they're not, getting completely behind, that kind of stuff. You coordinate it that way. But in this case, I'm not changing anything if I'm Marcus Freeman. Muhammad Abdi, Brian, if you were the athletic director, what's one aspect of the football operation will you look to improve to take Notre Dame to the next level, and why?
Well, if I'm the athletic director, I'm giving Irish Breakdown way more access to that.
Thanks, buddy. I
think that would totally help the overall operation.
Because if you're the athletic director, that means maybe I'm taking over. So I appreciate the access. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, I'm giving Irish Breakdown way more access to practice. In all seriousness, I think the one big thing is the staff beyond football needs to get even deeper. Like, I do think there's a need for even more expansion from that regard. Give Lauren Landau a little bit more to what he does. Give your nutrition program another staffer or two. Things along those lines. Matter of fact, I actually would create a nutrition program, like where, who knows, of maybe Lauren Landau's like the associate AD of strength conditioning or nutrition or whatever, but then under him maybe, or somebody like that. I think there actually is a guy that is above Lauren Landau that actually is kind of but I would say we're going to have this and we're going to really grow this to make sure that we are really working on improving, and I've said this before, the minds and bodies of our student athletes. And that, because I think the proper health of your body not only requires that you fuel it properly, right, with what you're eating and what you're putting into your body. I would focus on, as much as I can, natural type of development as opposed to a bunch of supplements. I think that's an even better way to do it. But then also incorporating sort of the mental health part of it as well. I think those are all things that could help you as a Notre Dame student athlete go to the next level, because there are unique challenges of being a student athlete in Notre Dame that you don't. I mean, guys, freaking Georgia has not only do they have all these criminal problems and stuff, they have a 41%. Did you see this, Vince?
I did. 41% graduation percentage.
And what I read is they actually take out transfers and early entries to the NFL out.
Wow.
And they still have that's to me, I don't care how many championships you've won, that's a fireable offense.
Man.
That's disgusting, right? Like those kids don't have to do jack except show up and play football, right? That's embarrassing. Notre Dame's not, Notre Dame kids have to go to class. They have to take real majors. They have to do this, they have to do that. And they have all these demands on them, NIL, social media, all that kind of stuff. As I've said many, many times, I won't get into that rant today. I think there needs to be a lot more for them from a building up their bodies and building up their minds and their spirits as well. Because you're University of Notre Dame, you can incorporate the spiritual aspect into this as well, and you should be. And so I think that would be the things that I would do is yes, more analysts and whatever, but it goes beyond that. The true really good operations go beyond that. It's making sure that the other things that people don't think about are built up even more as well.
Yeah.
And then of course you have to have the facilities to match that. That's the other thing that I think could help with the operation be a little bit better. I'd give like Chad Bowden's staff a little bit more. Couple more people and a little bit, more to what they're doing. So those are things that I would focus on. Because I think the on-field coaching part's pretty flipping good. Yeah, I do. I think the facilities has gotten a whole lot better.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's where I'm at.
Tommy Guns, has Golden come out of the gate running with the defense during team periods, or how does he kind of pare down the D so as not to overwhelm the O going through their first camp with a new offensive coordinator?
You don't.
No.
I look, there comes a point in time where Marcus Freeman may have to say, okay, we're struggling to get the offense going.
Right.
We need to, but to me, that just means I'd probably go to my scout teams a little earlier. Like, look, if you have to lower what you're doing defense, and I understand the sentiment behind it, Tommy, and trust me, I've had that thought before. Like, maybe, but that's what the 2 weeks of scout team work going into A&M will do. Like A&M doesn't blitz as much. Oh, okay, that's fine, but you're not preparing for A&M right now. And if you can handle these guys in pass pro, then you can handle anybody in pass pro. Heat them up and figure it out. I mean, look, if you gotta kind of hold things back a little bit because your offense can't handle it, then guess what? Your offense isn't that good. I'd rather, as an offensive coach, struggle early and then keep battling and building up confidence. And then when you start getting wins against that group, you feel really good about yourself. That first day you go out and just kick the crap out of your defense in practice.
That's not good.
Okay.
Well, I'm talking about if they do it at the beginning early.
Like when I was at Duquesne, we would just kind of dominate our defense. I mean, I had 2 receivers that spent time in the NFL. It's just like we were loaded. And early in camp, but when the defense had a couple days where they kicked our butts, it's like they were feeling really good about themselves.
Yeah.
It's like, and we saw that in 17. There was a couple days where I thought the D-line held up and did pretty well a couple days. And you say, oh, hey, you just could see the confidence they were building. And then, of course, the next day they just get destroyed again by that offensive line. But I just look, Marcus Freeman may have to say at some point in time, hey, we're not able to get anything going. Like we've had 2 practices in a row where the offense can't even get anything going because, okay, we need to figure something out. But honestly, if that were the case, then you're in trouble. You're really in trouble. And there's plenty of periods that they do things. Like they're not out there just playing team for 2 hours. There's plenty of periods where they're just working on inside run looks. It's just O-line versus D-line and backers and inside run. They're not running, all these crazy exotic blitzes. They're doing their normal run stunts and they're flowing the ball. They're getting plenty of that work in other types of drills. They don't have to call. I'm like the only time I would say that were true, Tommy, is if I had a super young team, including at quarterback and what I mean? If I was like just freshmen and sophomores everywhere, I might be like, hey, look, for the first week, let's not kill these kids mentally.
Exactly. That's why I said earlier, it's like, if it's a bunch of inexperienced guys, you got to give them a win every now and again. It's like anybody, right? You have to keep them focused and you gotta get a win every now and again. But that is not the case with this particular group, in my opinion. I don't think that's needed.
I agree.
Coach Bent 574. Are there any true sophomores or younger players that you feel are in a now or never situation due to the performance of teammates in their class and younger just emerging?
I mean, the only one that I would even think remotely is like that we've talked about is Kenny Minchie. That's the only one. I mean, look, and even then it's like, look, if CJ passes up Kenny now and Kenny stays and Kenny takes a huge jump, he can always pass CJ back up. But it's just going to be really hard because CJ is really good. But outside of that, I don't. If you're writing off a freshman or sophomore, you shouldn't.
Right.
You really shouldn't. Now, some guys, the only time there's sometimes you can write a guy off the first week of camp. I remember I thought Josh Barajas is going to be a stud. Vince.
Oh, yeah. He was a stud in high school.
And I remember the first day of fall camp, and I'm like, uh-oh. Like, literally, it was that quick. Because like, he got fat. That's disrespectful. I didn't
he was
mean
out
to
of
say
shape.
it like that.
He was out of shape.
He was really out of shape.
Shape.
I truly didn't mean it like that. That just was really disrespectful to say it that way. So I apologize. But he was very out of shape. He was not remotely close to being the athlete he was in high school. I mean, Vince, you saw him in person. Yeah. And then you saw him in person at Notre Dame. That was not the same kid. Agreed. I watched him at the Army All-American Bowl look like one of the best linebackers there. I mean, it was just like, I don't know who this kid is. I mean, he got to the point where, like, Notre Dame flipped him from Penn State. He was an Army All-American. And then he couldn't even play at, like, Illinois State. I mean, I don't know what happened to that kid, but you knew right away that was going to be a miss because he just didn't work.
Yeah, it just didn't work. It just didn't work.
Yeah. And so, except for times like that, you don't ever write a kid off because kids develop at different stages. They do. I mean, Robert Hainsey was the best player in the 2017 offensive line as true freshman. Clearly, because he was starting as a true freshman. By the time they were seniors, Aaron Banks was the All-American. Now, Robert was still very good, but he wasn't as dominant as Aaron. Aaron just needed more time to develop because he was a more raw player. So those things kind of happen all the time, Vince. I mean, where one guy is ahead of another guy younger, but when they get older, another guy steps up and he's better. So that's I think Lawrence Keys and Kevin Austin were from the same class. Lawrence Keys was more ahead of Kevin Austin their first few years. He played more, but by their senior year, Kevin was not his best receiver.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and then he's got to follow up to that.
Not trying to write those players off, but most of the time we look at older guys in this light.
Yeah.
Well, it's the new shiny toy also part of it.
Well, no, what he's saying is, like, he's trying to flip it and to see if there's any young guys who are like that. Because I understand the shiny toy thing, Vince, and you're spot on that. It's like we tend to forget that this guy's pretty good too, and this other guy has never made a mistake. But if a junior or senior is getting passed up by a freshman, then yeah, okay, that's just he's not going to get that back.
Yeah,
I mean, that's different. But when you talk about a freshman or sophomore, I'm just not there yet. I'm just not there yet.
Zach Martin prediction time using NCAA eligibility rules. Who wins freshman/newcomer of the year on offense and defense for Notre Dame? And who wins most improved for Notre Dame on offense and defense?
Ooh, okay. So what he's saying is we can use the redshirt freshman.
Yes.
Okay. So offensively, Vince, the eligible players are Charles Jagasaw.
Yep.
Who's a redshirt freshman. It would be well, really, Charles Jagasaw is the only redshirt freshman that is really in. Then it would have to be a true freshman. So you'd have to go with Micah Gilbert, Cam Williams,
one of the running backs,
Aeneas Williams, one of those guys would have to be it because those are. I mean, Jeremiah Love's a true sophomore,
right?
Jaden Greathouse, Jordan Faison, both true.
Sophomore.
KK Smith's the other one. KK would be that guy.
My initial gut was Charles Jagasaw.
Mine,
that's who I was going to go with, regardless, even before you broke it down. So
defense could be a little bit different, Vince, because defensively you've got, I think, Adon Schuler played in more than 4 games last year.
I think he was a special teams guy, wasn't he?
I could be. Yeah, I thought so too, but I could be wrong. Let me just go check. Actually, I now that you think, I think I might actually.
Oh, no.
Wrong. Yeah, he only played. He played 3 games in the regular season, or 4 games in the regular season, and then
freshman eligibility.
Yeah, his 5th game was not until the bowl game, so he only played 4 games. He played against Tennessee State, Central, Pitt, and Wake. So he is definitely that. So I would put him in. I would put him in that conversation as well.
Adon Schuler, you got KVA, you've got Bryce Young, you've got the corners. whoever emerges maybe as the fourth corner.
Boubacar, I don't think played. Drake Bowen, let's see, special team defense. He only played 4. Did he play more? Yeah, Drake's not a redshirt.
No,
he played a bunch of special teams.
Eligibility.
Yeah, he played a bunch of special teams last year. What about Boubacar? I wonder if Boubacar is how many did he play last year? Boubacar on defense only played in 4 games. So Boubacar would be in that. That's probably that's a good one. So I'm gonna go with Boubacar is my freshman newcomer of the year. He only played 4 games in the regular season last year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm going to go with Adon. I'm going to go with Adon Schuler on this one. I was very tempted to go with Bryce Young. I'm just still not sure what kind of snap count he's going to get on a regular basis. And it's going to I feel like he's going to have to work his way up to like second man in to have an opportunity to win that type of an award. So that's the only reason I didn't go with him. So I'm going to go with Adon because I think he's going to get a lot of snaps. He's going to get a lot of snaps as the third safety. Now, as far as we have to do most improved, so that could be anybody, right? So that doesn't even have to be.
I think offensively, because like to me, most improved doesn't necessarily mean you're more productive.
Right.
Like Jeremiah Love should have been more productive last year if not for the presence of Audric. And he should have still been more productive, but you had Audric in front of him.
Right.
Yeah, Jaden Greathouse could maybe be in that conversation.
Yep.
I'm actually going to go with Billy Schrouth, though. Yep. I think Billy Schrouth is going to be a really good player this year. I could be wrong on that, but Billy Schrouth would be my number 1. I'd probably go Jaden Greathouse, my number 2.
I was debating on Jaden Greathouse. I was also debating on Ashton Craig. I thought maybe he has an opportunity there.
Darian Price is another one that I'd think about.
Yeah. And again, he's coming back from not this year, coming back from an injury, but I've heard in many circles that it kind of takes a full year to come back from an injury like he had. And so this year he could just be absolutely dynamic. So that would definitely qualify. Defensively, should be an interesting one.
My initial thought is Josh Burnham.
Yep. Okay.
I've also thought about Drake Bowen. I think they're going to need Drake's more of they're going to need him to be probably the most improved.
Yeah. That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
I'm hoping that we're arguing about it maybe being Jordan Patel by the end of the season, but I'm just not going there.
I'm not ready.
I just got to see it. I got to see it, man. I'm in show me mode.
Yeah.
It's like Ryan and I last year, maybe a million times going into the season, we're kind of like show me mode with him. And like every show somebody would ask about him and I'd be like, I got to see it. I got to see it. That's how I am with Patel this year. 100% how I am with Patel this year.
Most improved, man, that's tough. I would love to go with one of the corners, but they were both pretty stinking good last year when they had opportunities.
Right, because playing more doesn't equal improved. It just means you've got more opportunity to play.
Correct.
Yeah.
And they were both good when they played. I mean, I so we can't really go that direction. I'm just trying to work my way through. Josh Burnham's a really good one though, because I don't think he's on a lot of people's radar either right now. He should be. And if you watch this show, he's on your radar. But I think the vast majority of people, I just don't think Josh Burnham is on their radar. And so that's why I think he's a good choice.
I think he is for this group of Irish Breakdown fans. I think I don't think he's getting talked a lot about from what I've been told from outside of what we're doing. Exactly my point. D-Troll Hunter, Brian, I'm curious if we know how we are getting to 85. Last I checked, we were at 86. And the 2 players I thought could be another medical were present in some form or fashion. That doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to be present when we get to the end of fall camp.
Right. It has to be set by game 1.
Yeah, because it could just be like they're trying to get those guys back and it just didn't work. I honestly don't. I got to redo the math and make sure that we're actually still at 85. But the only thing I can think of is there's still someone that's going to go on medical or somebody that they walk on that thought he was going to have a scholarship this year doesn't have a scholarship.
That would stink.
Yep. Unless it's a graduate student, because it's not as expensive, I don't believe, for graduates because you're not taking as much. And
true,
you don't have the room and board piece to it. Because if you're renting a house in town, that costs money, but it's not as much as it costs to stay on campus.
Right? Because it's not. Yeah.
Right. So,
because that does get paid for, doesn't it? When you're on scholarship, your off-campus housing gets paid for, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Coach Bent 574, Josh Pate said we had the second best combo of coordinators behind Ohio State. I think he's wrong, but it's debatable since Kelly only has to run the O. Who would be your top 5 combos of coordinators?
Well, look, I think Notre Dame's in the. It's funny. I was having this conversation with a Notre Dame staffer today. We were kind of talking around practice and such. You, Alan, or Vince, you know who it was, and that's kind of one thing we were talking about. Is like that's something that gives people around the program a little bit more confidence because there's just that experienced group there. And we were talking about Ohio State, and Ohio State's in the conference. I mean, to me, it's Notre Dame and Ohio State is kind of who I would just off the top of my head say it is, as far as just assistant coach coordinators. Like people say, well, USC, but I mean, Lincoln Riley is really the OC at USC.
Right, exactly.
And so, but the thing is, like, obviously Chip Kelly is going to get that nod because he's Chip Kelly and he's called plays at UCLA, I believe. But there's a different deal when you're the head coach calling an offense and then you're the OC running an offense, because as the head coach running the offense, you're still got play calling duties, but the OC's running the day-to-day. He's got to get back to running the day-to-day. So I do think there's something for him to prove, but I think he's going to be fine because it's not like Chip Kelly hasn't called an offense. It's not like Al Golden, right? One of our concerns when Coach Golden was hired was it's been a while since my man's called a defense because he wasn't the play caller on defense at Miami as the head coach. Well, Coach Kelly was calling plays at UCLA, right? And even though he had an offensive coordinator. So I would say I'd say because I think Jim Knowles did a heck of a job with Ohio State last year. He actually got them going a year earlier because in his past, Vince, year 3 was always the breakout year for Jim Knowles as a coordinator. Now, we did say there's a chance it could happen earlier at Ohio State because he's got way better players than he had at Duke and Oklahoma State.
Right.
But, I mean, they were really good last year. And I actually think their talent this year could be better. They're not as experienced at certain spots, but the talent, I mean, you get Caleb Downs there. He doesn't have the experience that Josh Proctor had, but he's a way better player. You're probably going to be a little bit more, obviously you don't have Neil's experience at linebacker without Steele Chambers and Tommy Eichenberg, but you're going to be better athletically. You've got a lot of your best defensive players coming back. You've got some really talented young up-and-comers. I mean, very talented. So Ohio State's in that conversation for me, Vince, certainly in that conversation for me. I've got to really think about, who some of those other ones are, good coordinator combinations. I'm just kind of going through the conferences right now. We'll see about Clemson. I know that they're hoping to. Florida State's one. I think the Alex Atkins, Adam Fuller, I think is the DC. That's a really good OC-DC combination that they have there. Plus, like Mike Norvell is still heavily involved in the offense, but Alex Atkins is running kind of the day-to-day operation. I'm not sure who calls plays, but he is very heavily involved in that. So I would go with Florida State is in that conversation for me, Vince, with that pair. Just looking through the Big 12, there's a lot of good coordinators on one side of the ball there, but not necessarily both. Yeah. Maybe Utah is in that conversation for me with Andy Ludwig on offense and Morgan Scalley on defense. That's a duo that I would have in my conversation for top 5. That could be a very good coordinator duo. I mean, you're going to laugh at this, but you almost got to at least consider Iowa now because Tim Lester's he's a kind of an average OC, but Phil Parker's so good
that it might bring up the average.
Well, no, but Tim Lester, even as a middle of the road,
yeah.
If Tim Lester's the 60th best coordinator in college football this year, 60th, that's about a 75 spot jump from where their coordinator was last year. Because I think there's like 135 teams in college football last year, so I put him at the very bottom because he was awful.
Yeah, I know.
Ryan Ferentz. I'm kind of joking about that being top 5. That's a little bit of a joke, but you get the point that I'm trying to make.
Yes, I do.
Oregon's got a really good coordinator combination. Will Stein did a great job with that offense last year. Great job. I mean, as good as Kenny Dillingham was in 2022, I think they were even better last year. I'm just not a huge fan of Tosh LePeau. I'm just not. I'm not a huge fan of his. I think Dan Lanning's a big reason why that defense is as good as it is. I think the head coach has a lot more to do with that than the coordinator. I could be wrong, but that's just my opinion. I like the duo that Penn State has. I love Chris Katalnicki from the guy came over from Kansas. I like Tom Allen as a D coordinator. He just wasn't a head coach, but I think he's a pretty good defensive coordinator. We'll see if he's able to improve that group. So those are some guys in the conversation. Let me just go look at the SEC real quick. Alabama's not there yet. Auburn, definitely not. Florida, no. Georgia, no. I think Georgia's just really talented. I'm actually curious to see how Georgia does this year. Are they one of those teams that the further they get away from Todd Monken, the less effective they're going to be offensively? So are they just going to rely on talent this year? We'll see. Yeah, I mean, I don't see a lot of great coordinate. I mean, I thought Mike Elko made a great offensive coordinator hire, and then he made a bad defensive coordinator hire. So I don't know that I love a lot of the coordinator combinations in the SEC. I really don't. If Mike Denbrock would have stayed at LSU, they would have won because I like the hire he made at D coordinator. The guy he brought over, the Baker guy he brought over from Missouri is a pretty good football coach. And then Denbrock would have been there. So that's probably my group, the guys that I'd look at, Vince, that I would say are in my conversation for that.
Okay. Tommy Guns, could you see Teddy Rizak going out to Rover?
Well, since he's already there, yes.
Oh, whooping. Yeah. Katie Keevers, how good does Riley Leonard need to be for Notre Dame to be championship contenders this season?
I'm actually, Katie, I know you guys have been busy. I think they got a new little one at the house as well. I think somewhat recently, or they're maybe supposed to have a new little one somewhat soon because, her husband John's also in the chat. Sometimes it's John on Katie's thing and sometimes it's Katie, so I'm never quite sure. But I would assume it's Katie. But Katie, I would say what I've said in the past is if Riley Leonard repeats what he did in 2022 at Duke.
That was my answer.
I think this team is a Final Four caliber team. And then if you get hot at a couple other spots, you can do that. For them to be considered a true championship team where they're as good as anybody else, I think he needs to be the same kind of impact athlete he was at Duke, and he needs to be about 15 or so % of a better thrower, 15 to 20% of a better thrower, not completion percent, just quality. Needs to improve his ability to hit the deep ball and eliminate some of the misses that he had at Duke. If he can, honestly, if he repeats his athleticism and he can be more consistent throwing the ball down the field, then I think this Notre Dame team is one of the 4 best teams in college football. I think they will be. By the time we get to the playoff, they may not be in September as the O-line's getting comfortable and all that. They may just be a top 10 team in September. But I think by the time we get to November and then in December, Vince, when this O-line has, Charles Jagasol's now in double digits in career starts, Billy Strouth and Ashton Craig are now in double digits in career start, Emil Wagner and all that. I think this team's got a chance to be really dangerous if Riley Leonard's about a 15 to 20% overall better player as a thrower than he was in 2022. Now, keep in mind, Jaden Daniels probably made about a 30+% jump from what he was, an overall impact, in my opinion. So this isn't like he doesn't have to be Jaden Daniels. He doesn't have to go be final year of Jaden Daniels good. He doesn't have to be that at all. So I hope that answers your question.
Aiden Benami, do you think the fast pace of practice can make the players rush their proper routine technique? I love the urgency and focus. Sometimes I feel like they got caught up in tempo and not the skills.
Only if you're not running your drill. This is why we talk. This is a great question, Aiden, because this is a very good observation of what can happen if you don't properly teach your players how to work fast. And it's also about why coaching the right way matters so much. You have to be willing to coach in a way that you're coaching on the fly, and you have to hold them accountable to technique. If you're so obsessed with tempo that you lose sight of the importance of doing it the right way, then your team will struggle with the technical aspects of the game. So it's not so much the pace of practice that's the problem. It's what you're emphasizing and allowing in practice that becomes the problem. So if you as a coach don't handle it the right way, then that will be a byproduct of it. So it's not so much the pace as much as are the coaches even more focusing on teaching the right things on the fly. If you're a coach and you're working tempo, Vince, and you and I know this, right? If you're just a yeller And when I mean a yeller, it's just like you're pissed off, like, come on, you got to be better than that. You're not teaching anything. And when you're coaching on the fly, like old school, that was okay. You get pissed off, they come back over to you, explain it, and then you run the drill again. Now you only have time for that initial discussion. And if you're wasting time with this is, oh, come on, guys, give me a break. Okay, well, you just missed your window to actually teach them something.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's what you see from Denbrock. It's like he's constantly talking. There's always, but it's all instruction. It's not like, oh, come on, guys, this is a bull crap. No, it's like, you've got to be better. You've got to be perfect. You've got to make sure you get here. You've got to make sure you're doing this. And that's what it's got to be. So it's a coaching thing more than a pace thing, in my opinion. And that also is part of what you've been preparing for since January. So no, it's just everything you do. I mean, you watch all the weight room videos, Vince, they are working fast. It's got to be what you do and everything that you do.
Yep.
So
win the interim. That's what you got to do.
Yep. Sounds good.
D-Troll Hunter, do you think Notre Dame should do an NIL fundraiser similar to other programs where they have a fan appreciation day where fans can purchase tickets and attend? I don't know that they need to, though. I mean, I get it. I think that could be a fun way for fans to maybe interact with players and things like that. And that's cool. I get that.
I actually do like it, Vince. Like, yeah. I do. I think because, again, if you can raise some funds to say, hey, we're going to raise, let's say you're able to raise $100,000 or something like that, you know, like that something like, hey, we're going to use this to give to our, you know, fourth string guys and walk-on guys and stuff like that. Then we can reallocate the collective money to other things. I certainly,
I could see
look, here's the thing that I don't think Notre Dame does enough of. I think Notre Dame, in their attempt to kind of shield themselves from the outside, they do a lot. The Notre Dame program does a ton in the community.
Yeah.
Like, so I want to make sure I'm clear about that. They do a ton in the community, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for the job and I think Hunter Bibben's a big part of this. A lot of those guys that are part of that, it's like, you know this, they're at the Boys and Girls Club all the time. They're at the food bank all the time. They're at shelters. I mean, they're at schools all the time. I love how much they're involved. But that's not the same as being interacting with fans. They close themselves off to fans entirely. I mean, they don't do, and then the only fan events they have are for fans that have a lot of money. It's called the thing they can come play. The
fantasy camp.
Yes,
it's $5,000 a piece.
I do think they need to do more to incorporate fans into what they do. I think there should be something like that, and maybe, and I don't even know that they need to do an NIL fundraiser. I'd say do something like. And this could, hey, Vince, if you think they do enough, okay, let's do something where we're going to do this and we're going to, raise as much money as we can and we're going to give it to the Boys and Girls Club and the food bank and this and that and, do it sort of as a fundraiser. I do think they need to do more things where the players and the fans get to interact in a certain way. Now, of course, nowadays, you never know. You got to be careful and all that. I get all that, but make people go through metal detectors. You know what I mean? Like you do that when they get into the stadiums.
Right.
So I do think that Notre Dame has done too much to disassociate themselves with fans, the everyday normal fan, and especially like on campus. And I think it's an unfortunate thing, but I think something like that would be goodwill amongst the fan base, because that is something that I hear a lot. Like, yeah, I mean, I love the team, but it used to be where people would be outside practice in the first couple of days cheering them on. Now it's like they don't want us to tell people in practices because they don't want people showing up to cheer the team on.
It's funny because there was a question on our board about what time practice was. I had it all typed out, Brian, and I was like, wait a minute, we're not allowed to say.
Right.
Like, which is whatever. It is what it is. But I agree, some fan interaction would be good. Aiden Benami, who has got lit up the most by coaches so far?
Oh, I don't know that I could point to an individual player.
No, it's been nicely spread out. And, again, we're not there enough to see, if a guy's messing up a play.
I've seen more guys get lit up by a Don Schuler than they've got lit up by the coaches. You didn't see that today, Vince. But man, no, I'm serious. Like Don, has gotten on some dudes. Oh, yeah.
Guys, really?
First couple days. Oh, yeah. Don jumping on some guys. Yeah, he's showing some vocal leadership, no doubt.
Got no problem with that leadership.
Yeah.
That's awesome. How would you compare? Oh, this is from Aiden again. How would you compare the beginning of practice to last year or 2 years ago? Skill-wise, togetherness, organized, the whole overall vibe.
I mean, a lot of that we've already talked about, right? I mean, we've talked about the unique aspects of how they're getting a lot of reps. We've talked a lot about they're a longer team, a more athletic team. I mean, there's a lot of good structure to what they're doing. And when guys aren't doing what they need to do, like getting out there, it's been players that have, and this is the thing about so there was a freshman DB that was late getting out on a one-on-one. And so it had to hold up again. And man, after that rep, that was the end of the period, Vince. And Adon Schuler was like a beeline to that kid getting on him. So, I mean, all that stuff, it's good. It's, they look like a veteran team. Honestly, they look like you would not expect them to have as much youth as they have. But as we've also said, there's a lot of 5th and 6th year seniors on this team too, right? I mean, so, yeah, they look better than they have in past years, but that doesn't mean a whole lot. I mean, It just means they're a little bit more organized. It doesn't mean they're going to be a better football team. But, yeah, they're longer. They're more athletic. Those things that we've talked about in the last 3 practice reports, I mean, those things are all good. Mm-hmm. Togetherness, we can't evaluate. I mean, you could look together in a practice field, but if you're not in the locker room.
Right.
I mean, so that one I can't evaluate.
Right. Iden, will Burnham be starting by the beginning of the season?
Oh, I wouldn't get too much caught up into who starts at certain positions. Like big ends one. I honestly, if I'm Notre Dame, I'm probably starting RJ Oben, even if Josh Burnham's the better player. And the reality is, folks, is they're both going to play. It doesn't matter who starts the game. It matters who's in there when it's the biggest moments and who's in there in the fourth quarter. It really doesn't matter who starts the game. And that's true at a lot of positions. Play the veteran as the starter. Let him be the first guy out there and then Josh, at the end of the day, Josh is going to play 40 snaps and RJ is going to play 25, whether RJ starts off at the beginning or not, if Josh is the better player in that instance. So I'd say probably no, barring injury.
Yeah,
probably no.
I would agree with that, but it doesn't mean he's not going to get the most snaps in a game. Right.
And ideally, you want them to have split snaps because that means both of them are playing very well, and then you get 10 or so from Bryce Young, and you're good to go.
Absolutely.
That's kind of how I hope it is. Yep.
Jake Rustman. Brian, have you been able to get eyes on Rod Hurd at practice? How is he looking, if so?
Good. I mean, you can tell he's picked up the defense pretty well. Just the way he communicates, being where he needs to be. He should have had a pick on day 2. He should have picked CJ Carr off on day 2, but he didn't. It was like high, and he didn't time his jump correctly, and he missed it. But no, he's been good. Flying around. He's a good athlete. He's a little better athlete than I thought he was going to be.
Okay.
So that was good to see. Not like elite athlete, but he's definitely a better athlete than what I thought he was going to be. A little bit better. And I thought he was a quality athlete anyway. He's definitely a better athlete than what they had there last year. That's for sure. Now, again, does he know the defense as well as DJ Brown? Doubtful. I mean,
DJ Brown was here like he's a doctor. So
right. I
mean,
lots of school guys go to school for 7 years. Yeah. They're called doctors.
Exactly.
Or quarterbacks at Louisville.
Oh, yeah. Jesse Ferguson. Who are the top 5 players for Notre Dame in this category? Guys that will probably not start versus A&M, but will make a major impact in 24.
Jadarian Price. Jordan Faison. And we're not talking about making an impact on special teams. We're just talking about making an impact on the offense or defense, right? Josh Burnham.
As I say, you just named one.
Right. Josh Burnham. Jason Onye. And
say it.
Jalen Sneed.
Ooh, didn't see him going there.
You thought I was going to go with either Kingston or Adon?
I was going Adon, yeah. That was what I was figuring the last one would be. Yep.
I still think there's a chance Adon starts.
Okay.
I don't, and I think that'll be kind of like co-starters type of thing at that position.
Okay.
But yeah, I think Jalen Sneed is going to have an impact as a pass rusher and and that's as much wishful thinking as it is a prediction.
Could you see them? Remember, it was Kyle Hamilton's freshman year when they went 3 safeties.
Yeah.
Sometimes could you see something like that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Maybe not as much because they have more of a true nickel now.
Okay.
They didn't really have a nickel on that team.
Fair enough.
So probably not. But I think that now, as far as rotating a third safety in a lot, and they did a lot of that in 19, that's where I thought you were going to go with that. Yes, I would say that for sure.
Gotcha.
Good question.
Balpine Shillelagh, as Karen said, the present is a gift. So what gift do you hope to get from Coach Freeman this year? Breakout athlete, USC beatdown, big playoff run. be as unrealistic as your heart desires.
Well, if I can be as unrealistic as my heart desires, and I'm
national
going
championship.
going to the national championship in an undefeated season, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, could you imagine if Notre Dame's the first 16-0 team in history? That'd be pretty amazing.
Oh, sign me up.
Because Michigan went 15-0 last year. Bama's had some. Clemson went 15-0 one year, so we've seen that. But LSU went 15-0, so it's first 16-0 team. That'd be pretty awesome.
Sign me up.
Be pretty awesome. I mean, if we're being a little bit more realistic, I mean, look, I think look. My prediction is a playoff +1 is minimum of what this team should be this year, and depending on what their seeding is. But yeah, I mean, I think a playoff run should serve.
That's mine. A big playoff run is exactly what I think is realistic, but also I would be ecstatic. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's possible to be both, and I agree that they should win their first playoff game, no question. And I would anticipate that they should win their second, depending on who it is, where it is, all of those different things. But yeah, a big playoff run would be making it to the Final Four and potentially winning that game as well. So that would be where I think this team should be, but I would be over the moon if that actually did occur.
Good stuff, Vince. Here we go. Now let's get to Mark Avalone.
Do you see a huge difference in quote-unquote elite receivers from regular receivers justifying the almost $30 million salaries in the NFL? Will it regress eventually like running backs did? I don't think it'll regress like running backs did because I don't see offenses going back to run-oriented offenses anytime soon.
Well, I think what you'll see, however, is you'll see teams that are winning are not paying that kind of money for receivers.
Sure. That's I could see. Yeah, that I could definitely see.
You'll see teams draft guys and then in year 4 trade them or let them walk and go replace them with somebody else because
that I could see.
Because if you're paying a receiver $30 million and let's say you have a big time, you've got $80 million tapped up in 2 players.
Right. That's unrealistic. And the salaries that these wide receivers are making are ridiculous for what they actually produce and bring to the table. It's ridiculous. Now, obviously, the passing game is much more of a thing in the NFL than it ever used to be. No doubt about it. And it still blows my mind that the Bears have never had a 4,000-yard passer in this day and age. But that's where they are.
Jay Cutler never got there? No. I could have swore he had a year where he was around.
I don't believe so.
I mean, you're the Bears fan. You'd know. I just found that surprising.
It's a fairly depressing fact, but either way.
Yeah, I'm looking at his highest was he had 2 years of over 3,600. He never got to 4,000.
Yeah. So
no, I was right. He had a 4,000-yard season, but it was his last year in Denver.
Okay.
I knew he had a 4,000-yard season, but it was his last year in Denver.
Just wasn't wearing the Bears colors.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but either way, the point is I could see salaries coming down, but I don't see offenses changing. So I guess there's kind of
I don't think salaries for receivers come down. I just think you're going to see teams. A lot of those big contracts are going to start being given to free agents, not re-signing. I don't because you have to look at it too. There's so many more receivers nowadays.
Yeah,
because of 7-on-7, the teams, college teams playing 3-4 receiver offenses. There's just so many talented receivers. It's like, why do I'd rather pay 15 for 2 guys than 30 for 1.
Absolutely.
For 2 guys who are really good than 30 for 1. Yeah. And then I'll have the guys I draft. That's kind of how I'd handle it.
Absolutely. Have some confidence in what you can do.
Yep. Agree.
Alex Flagstad, what are some things offensively you would do to maximize the Notre Dame offense against a front 7 as tough as Texas A&M?
I mean, number 1, don't sell your own players short.
Fair.
Don't coach scared and act like you can't handle those guys. I mean, look, you got 5-star kid at left tackle. You got a top 100 kid at right tackle. You've got a top 100 kid at right guard. If Rocco starts, you're gonna have a top 100 kid at left guard, and you got a pretty talented center. Don't talk yourself into being afraid of them. Respect your opponent. Don't fear your opponent. That's number 1. And in the past, Notre Dame had way too much fear of their opponents.
That's a T-shirt.
Right? You had to convince yourself, well, we're not as good as them. And that's what I liked about what Notre Dame did against Ohio State last year. They didn't do a good enough job of doing what they need to do to win, but they didn't coach they didn't coach that game like, I don't know if we're good enough to beat these guys.
They didn't coach scared.
The year before, I thought they did at times offensively. They didn't do that last year. It's like, hey, we're as good as you, and we're going to come at you. And so it just didn't execute at times, and then didn't make the right decisions at times. But I don't like the call that Jared Parker made late in the game that I didn't like. That was not a scared call. It was not a conservative. If anything, if they were conservative, they would have kept Audric in the game, and just in that probably time they should have probably been a little bit conservative because they were leaning on him, but they were trying to make some plays and that type of thing. But just don't first of all, don't make your plan, because if you game plan, you can tell them all things, but if your game plan is you're coaching, hey, we're max proing every time we drop back to throw, we're going 12 personnel and running max pro the first 8 drop, like, you don't think we can block these guys, do you? Right? But some things you can do, obviously, establish the running game. Take advantage of the fact that they're in a new system. Mix up your motions and shifts a lot. Get them thinking and communicating. It's the first game that they're communicating in that defense, right? Do things like that. Utilize who you are. Utilize the RPO game. Make them defend the width of the field. If you're worried about their really good front 4, and I'm not worried about their front 7, I'm worried about their front 4. If you can't handle their linebackers, you're just not very good at this point in time, in my opinion. But make them defend more of the field. To neutralize the pass rush with screen game, with moving the pocket, with your quick game, with your RPOs. And the best way to neutralize a really good pass rush, be physical and run right at them. Those are things that you can do, but trust your players. Like, here's my thing that I would say that is frustrating for me is the entire conversation about the A&M game are the couple areas where A&M seems to have an advantage over Notre Dame.
Right.
And Notre Dame fans are completely ignoring the fact that their receivers, Notre Dame's receivers, should be better than A&M's DBs. And Notre Dame's DBs should be better than A&M's receivers. And hey, here's a thought. How are they going to block Notre Dame's defensive line? Because Notre Dame's offensive line should be better than Texas A&M's. And Notre Dame's defensive line, maybe an NFL talent would take a back seat to A&M, but as far as the production, I don't think does take a back seat to A&M. So like, you're the better team. Coach like it. Act like it. Don't go in there scared. 2019 Georgia, they went in there hoping that they could hang on and maybe win that game.
Right.
You're the better team. Act like it. It's like scene from Rudy, right?
Yeah.
You're an All-American and a captain. Act like it. You know what I mean? Like, dude, you're the better team. You're the top 10 team.
I am.
You're the team that's third year of your new head coach. You're the better team. Act like it, right? And utilize make them defend your speed, right? Make them defend your mobile quarterback. Get them chasing. Don't just line up in 13 personnel, 12 personnel, and run downhill and hope that you can do, and get into the flow of the game, right? Go at them, attack them.
Sure. Now, schematically, there's some things that you can do, obviously, to minimize the impact.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it's motion shifts, make them defend the width of the field. Absolutely. Those are all those things, but go after them.
I'm going to run some read option, which means I'm not blocking one of their guys and making him wrong. You know what I mean?
Maybe you're going to have a tough time with Nick Scourton. Who's covering Mitchell Evans? Why aren't we talking about that conversation?
Right.
Who's going to cover Jeremiah Love out of the backfield? I want to talk about that conversation. Like, use those things to your advantage. But I think Notre Dame fans need to make themselves realize, like, hey, you are actually your team that you follow has the better roster than that A&M team. Stop believing you guys all complain about how much the bias there is in the media, but then too much of our fan base believes it. That's the problem. A&M does not have a better roster than Notre Dame. If A&M beats Notre Dame in the opener, that's concerning to me. Year 3 versus game 1. I'm sorry, that's a problem for me. That's concerning for me. If it's close, I expect it to be close. But Notre Dame has the better team. They should win that game. It's not going to be easy, but they should win that game. And the players got to believe that to be true. Right. But the fans got to believe that to be true as well, because otherwise you're just going to be freaking out going into that game.
Archer 452. Which team do you think has the biggest variance of possible season outcomes? For me, it's Wisconsin. I think I see them winning 9 games, but I could see them winning 5.
I have a hard time seeing them win 9. I'm not high on this Wisconsin team this year. I'm really not. One team that pops into my head, Vince, is Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
Like they're a team that talent-wise could win 9 games, but then I could also see them going 5-7. Like that's that 9-5 thing because their schedule is so hard. Like
Michigan, I think, could be that team too. I think there's a possibility. I could see some variance in that.
Yeah.
In
you
that
think
schedule.
They could be like a 10-11 win team?
I think they could be a double-digit win team, but then I could also see them being a 500 team. So, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I think a 10 wins is like the ceiling. But if things go south, I could see them continuing south.
Yeah.
And then you're looking at like a 500 team. You know what I mean? I could definitely see that being the case.
I have a weird one for you. A very weird one for you. There's 2 in the Big 12 that I think of when I think of this. One is Arizona.
Okay.
Because Arizona has talent. They have a talented quarterback. I think he's not as good as some people make him out to be. I think they have a very talented receiver. They've got some good athletes there. I could see them winning 9-10 games again this year. I could also see them struggling. And last year being a little bit of a flash in the pan, and they've got a new coach. The guy that built them up is not there. I could see them dropping off. The other one is Oklahoma State. Now, this is going to sound weird because I think Mike Gundy's been such a consistent coach. But I could see Oklahoma State, and I'm going to pull up their schedule, Vince. You know, I look at their schedule. They play South Dakota State in the opener, Arkansas in game 2, at Tulsa in game 3, Utah in game 4 at home, at Kansas State, home against West Virginia, at BYU, at Baylor, home against Arizona State, at TCU, home against Texas Tech, at Colorado. I could see them winning 10 games. I could see them winning 10, maybe 11 games. I mean, they got a really good team coming back. But they're also the kind of team that if they don't come together early, or if they have a key injury at a couple spots, I mean, South Dakota State's the defending national champions at the FCS level. They could beat Oklahoma State. They could beat a lot of teams in Division I. Arkansas is athletic enough to upset you. And then you get Utah. There's a chance if they don't come out of the gate well, that they could struggle early and then it snowballs and they struggle. I could see that. I'm not predicting it, but I could see that. Oklahoma State's a team because they've got, to me, one of the more challenging Big 12 schedules. They've got to play at K-State, at BYU, at TCU, at Colorado, and then they also get Utah and West Virginia at home and Arizona State at home, Texas Tech at home. Like that's a challenge. And then their non-conference is actually pretty tough. You play a South Dakota State, to me, if they were an FBS team, would be a lot like James Madison when they jumped up. They went from FBS to immediately winning 9-10 games at the FCS national championship contending team to immediately winning 9-10 games. I think JMU won 10-11 games last year, Vince, in like year 2 of being in an FBS team. And they're not nearly as good as what South Dakota State was. Well, I should say not. They're not as good. They're close, but they're not as good. So I could see them beating Oklahoma State. And if that happens, then I think they could go they could collapse because their schedule just doesn't get any easier after that. So I could see that.
Casey Curley, how much different do the receivers look compared to last year? And does it seem like the quarterbacks are more willing to take shots downfield in this new Denbrock offense?
Well, I'm going to work backwards on this, Vince. It's not about willing; it's demanded.
Exactly.
It's you don't have a choice. If you're not willing to throw the ball down the field, Mike Denbrock's not going to play you.
Exactly. And we saw that in the spring. I mean, and from a Mike Denbrock talking to the team, you know, yelling at them, "This is what we do," you know, stuff like that. That's what we saw more in the spring. We haven't had a chance to see anything of that like that in the fall. It's been more the spring, and that's just the offense. That's part of the offense. So yes, that part's easy.
How do they compare to last year? Overall, just a lot faster.
Yeah.
I mean, Jaden Greathouse is faster than, like, you have Chris Tyree, right, who's as fast as anybody that they have, but Notre Dame has like 3 guys that are in the conversation with Chris Tyree. I mean, Jaden Harrison's in the conversation. Chris Mitchell's in that conversation. KK Smith is healthy. He didn't practice. He wasn't part of this group last year. Jordan Faison's faster than he was last year. Jaden Greathouse is definitely more explosive than he was last year. Bo Collins is faster than Jaden Thomas. And then you've added Cam Williams, who's really fast to the mix. So they're much faster. They're longer than they were last year. I mean, one of your fastest guys, you're arguably your second. You had Tyree and Tobias, and then after that, there wasn't a lot of speed. Your next fastest guy was Braylon James, who didn't play. You know, this year you've got a lot more speed in the mix. You've got KK in the mix. You've got Chris Mitchell in the mix. You've got Jaden Harrison in the mix. Plus, you add in Greathouse and Faison, who are faster than they were. I mean, I say what you want. Some people might disagree. Rico Flores, I don't know if he's in the top 6 if he's on the team right now. He was their number 2 leading receiver last year. At wide receiver. He's not in the top 6 for me right now. Who's he over? A healthy Jaden Greathouse? A healthy Jordan Faison? He wasn't better than either of those 2 guys last year when they were healthy. He's not over a healthy Jaden Thomas, because the only reason he played last year is because Jaden Thomas got hurt.
Correct.
He's not over Chris Mitchell. He's not over Bo Collins. Like, that's 5 right there off the top of my head, right? Greathouse, Faison, Mitchell, Collins, Thomas. He's not over any of those guys, in my opinion, if he comes back. So, I mean, think about that. So, yeah, it's an interesting one, Vince. I think just a more dynamic. And here's the thing, a lot more experienced.
Yes.
Way more experienced.
That's massive, though, too. That's
Tobias had 1 career catch coming into last year. Chris Tyree had 56, but they were all at running back. So I mean, you were very inexperienced. Because what did we say last year, Vince? The freshmen had to play. At least 1, maybe 2 freshmen had to play. We said that last year. Right now, none of them have to play. Not a single freshman is going to play because they need him to, unless they have a couple injuries. If any freshmen play this year, it's because they earned it.
Absolutely.
Like Micah Gilbert's in the rotation because he beat out Deion Colsey in the spring. And he's pushing those other 2 veterans. That's why Micah Gilbert's getting reps with the 1s and 2s right now. Not because they need him to.
Yeah.
Because they can just throw Deion in there and be like, Deion's played a lot of football in the last couple of years when he's been healthy. He's there because he's beat people out. He's earned it. Now, he's got to keep earning it if he's going to actually play by the time we get to August 31st. But he's only playing because last year, Rico and those guys, they played because Jaden Greathouse is the only freshman that played a bunch early. He kind of earned it. The others kind of played like Rico played early last year, honestly, Vince. And this is not just true by what we saw, but also true by what I was told, because they needed him to play.
Yeah.
I mean, he had to play. They didn't. I mean, they had to play at least 2 freshmen in the rotation to get to the numbers that they wanted to get to. And that's not the case this year. So it's a different animal, man. It's a very different animal. So I'm actually looking at it last year, Vince. Let me just look at something here real quick. Yeah, Rico Flores played 19 snaps in the opener, which is a blowout, 24 in the next game, which is a blowout. He was only in there for 17 in the 3rd game, plus a lot of that was late in the game. He didn't start getting a lot of snaps till Ohio State, Duke, Louisville, like late in the year there. He didn't play a ton early. It was occasional rotation and coming in late when they were blowing people out.
Right. Mr. Murdercap, do you think Jaden Greathouse is going to have a breakout year?
Vince, I've answered this one a bunch of times. My answer is yes. I'd love to hear what your take is.
Oh, I'm with you 100%. And as much as we like to give Salty a hard time because he's such a big Jaden Greathouse fan and all those different things, he's playing with a confidence right now that we saw at times last year, but the injury definitely slowed him down a little bit. Them moving him around when I don't know that he was ready to be moved around, I think made a difference. And part of that was because of other injuries and things of that nature. He's best in the slot, in my opinion, and that's where they've got him primarily working right now. He'll understand other positions and can still play other positions, but he was dominant in the slot last year when he played. And I think he's playing with a new bit of confidence. I think he's stronger. I think he's a little bit faster. And so, yeah, I am very confident that he is going to have a breakout year this year. But I also think that his absolute national breakout is going to be his junior year. So breakout, yes, for Notre Dame fans, breakout nationally as a junior in 26. Jacob Watson getting married tomorrow, fellas.
Congratulations, man. First of all, congratulations, Jacob. Happy for you, man. Welcome to the club.
That's awesome.
And welcome to the club. We're not those guys who are like, oh, married. So I love being married. I have a great life,
Ball and chain.
Yeah, no, heck no, man. Heck no. If I said that about my wife, she's Italian, she would hit me with that ball and chain. Mm-hmm. So I'm just joking.
I can't do that. Hey, listen, no. I can't wait till my kids leave. So it's just me and my wife.
Yes.
Again, okay.
Yeah, I'm sure you missed that. Like,
oh my God.
And we're very blessed. Well, we're not blessed because we both want children. Sure. And we haven't been blessed with it. But from just a time together,
yes,
it's, we can do that. You can. I enjoy being around my wife. So welcome to the club, man. And
I
hope that you're excited and ready to go. And we're very, very happy for you guys.
Absolutely.
For sure. For sure. Now, Vince, on to his question.
Yes. Are there any returning seniors that didn't have great years in the past making any strides this year? Really hope Colsey reaches his potential.
Well, right now, Colsey's working with the 3rd and 4th team, so I don't see
Right.
that one happening right now unless something changes between now and fall camp. Seniors that did not have – well, Jaden Thomas did not have a very good year last year because of injuries, and I think he'll be better this year than he was last year. As long as he can stay healthy, that's going to be the big thing.
Sure.
Seniors. Well, I'm hoping that's true of one of the guards.
Okay.
I'm trying to think. Jason Onye. He was just kind of a role player. I think he's making big strides. I could see Jason Onye being in that conversation. I mean, a lot of the other seniors that are playing are guys that were already pretty good.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, Jack Kaiser, Howard Cross, Riley Mills. Well, here's one. I hope Jordan Patelho, is in that conversation as too.
Okay.
We haven't seen it yet because we haven't seen enough practice.
Right. And that
to be able to say that.
And he's like a super senior. He's been around forever. Yeah. You know what I mean? As far as like the actual true 4th year senior guys, I think you kind of nailed it. It's kind of the guards.
Yeah.
I think
guards and Onye
is the big one. Yeah. And Onye for sure. Cause there's a bunch of graduate seniors and then there's a bunch of super seniors who are here, for their 6th year.
Yeah. And some of the other seniors like Mitchell Evans was pretty good last year. I mean,
right.
So he had a great year. I mean, at least when he was healthy. I'm trying to think of who else might be in that conversation. I mean,
but most of the guys that get asked back for a 5th year or a 6th year are guys that contributed,
right,
and are going to contribute again this year.
It's rare. You're right. It's rare that a guy comes back and
right. Chief Brody, why did Notre Dame not run prevent defense in the Big House under the lights 2011?
I mean, look. You could have run prevent all you want. Number one, there was too much time left to run prevent. Number one. Here's the thought. Don't not cover Jeremy Gallen. Don't turn a guy loose. You know what I mean? Like
have a plan for a mobile quarterback. That would have been good too.
Well, I mean, just that last drive.
Yeah.
That was all about Jeremiah Gallen ran a wide fade and post snap switch, and they just turned him loose. Just blown coverage. Simple as that. I don't know that you've heard me say this before, but unless there's 10 seconds on the clock or you're up 2 scores,
play your defense.
I don't like playing prevent.
Yeah, agreed.
I just don't think it helps. Plus, prevent gives a lot of room to Denard Robinson to just take off running, and and that's not something you want.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Tyler Bang, Coach Denbrock talked about not knowing the offense's identity during his press conference. What do you think they're trying to establish based on limited observations of the practices?
I mean, what he's always done.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to be a balanced, explosive football team. I mean, just look, guys, coaches use identity as a talking point in press conferences, and Mike Denbrock's a veteran. But he's also true in the standpoint you're in practice 3 with these guys. You don't know who you're going to be. You've got position battles that you're going to rage. This is really the first time you've had Riley Leonard at full strength since he's been here at Notre Dame.
Yeah, that's a massive.
So there's a lot you're learning about this football team.
Let me ask you a question. You coached. I coached. Did you ever sit around, your coaching team and one of your coaches' meetings, like, guys, what's our identity? Like that. I don't feel like that conversation's ever had. Now, what you're good at, what you want to do to other teams, I think, based on who you are. But I've never had the actual conversation about what our identity is. It's a talking point.
We would, but it's more of we knew what our identity was. What do we got to do to get there?
Yeah.
Like that was more of a conversation because when I think of identity in the right sense, it's more of, okay, do we want to be a fast team? Do we want to be a tempo team? Do we want to be a physical team? Do we want to be a balanced team? Do we want to be, you know what I mean? Like it's those type of things. And you have established this is who we want to be. You think you know who you want to be. And then it's like, hey, what do we got to do to get there?
Right.
But was it something where we sat at the end of every practice and it was a topic of conversation? No, unless we didn't think we were getting where we wanted to be. But it was never what's our identity was rarely a topic of conversation. And whenever it did happen, it was on one of the few bad teams that I was on.
Yeah. Okay.
Because our head coach didn't know. He now works for PJ Fleck. It's one of the dumbest coaches I've ever been around my entire life. Just thought he knew how to create an identity, but he didn't. He definitely did not.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Brian Van Gorder's mustache. This ought to be good. With the fallout at wide receiver in the 25 class and with what we expect with a more pass-productive offense with Denbrock, do you think Notre Dame will get the bulk of their wide receiver depth in the portal?
I think it's August 2nd, and we need to actually see how the season plays out. Y'all didn't know who KK Smith was at this time 2 years ago. Let's just take a deep breath and let it play out.
Yeah.
Okay. Could it happen that way? Sure. I mean, number one, they have 2 receivers committed. They're going to get another one. I know of a couple guys they're recruiting already. Let's see how it plays out. Okay. Let's see how it plays out. So if they don't do well, if they have to get the bulk of their guys in the portal, that means the season probably didn't go how we hoped it would go.
Sure.
That's how I look at it.
Yep. Andrew Gilmore, what Notre Dame opponent will have the best run game?
Army. I'm being serious.
I know you are.
I think they're going to, because I think Army's going to go back to what they were. I think Navy's still trying to be something that they're not, that they haven't been. And I think Army's going to go back to what they were. Now, if you want to, I'm not being sorry. So, like, I'll answer it 2 ways. I'll answer it that way. It's Army. Now, if you want to ask me which of the traditional teams is going to have the best run game, I would probably go, Georgia Tech. And the reason I say that is because I think Georgia Tech presents the most dangerous backfield as far as you've got a running back that was 1,000-yard rusher, Jamal Haynes, shifty, quick guy, runs their package as well. But then you've got a quarterback that can not only scramble, but he can actually do things in the run game. I think Haynes King had over 700 yards rushing last year. And then Jamal Haynes had over 1,000 yards rushing last year for Georgia Tech. And so that, to me, they got 3 to 4 guys that played a lot on the offensive line coming back from last year. I think they got a portal guy coming in from last year. They ran the ball for 203.8 yards per game last year, Vince, and their 2 best rushers come back. Yeah, Jamal Haynes was at 1,059 yards last year, 6.1 per carry, 7 touchdowns. Haynes King was at 737 yards per game, or 737 yards last year, 6.1 yards per carry. So I'd probably go Georgia Tech. And then if you look at the national rankings, let's see where Georgia Tech was. They ranked 13th. And the only Notre Dame opponents that ranked ahead of them was Army. So I think it's fair to say, like, okay, I think they've got a shot to repeat that for now. And then I think that Georgia Tech got a running back as well in the portal that gives them a second good back. I could be wrong on that. I'm actually pulling up their commitment list now, Vince, but I thought they got another running back to add to the mix. And their head coach is an offensive line coach, Vince. Brent Key's an offensive line coach. So he's going to want to run the football.
Right.
So yeah, I think that would be the team that, to me, is the best running team that they're going to face this year. So I'm not just giving the cop-out Army answer. I give that one.
That's
that true.
One,
it's true, though.
Yeah, I know it is.
But I think of the traditional offenses, I think it's Georgia Tech is the team that probably concerns me the most right now.
Well, they got a mobile quarterback.
And they're committed to it.
Helpful.
Yeah, and they're committed to it.
Right.
So that's good.
Jordan Pinheiro. Are there any wide receiver recruits Notre Dame is working on in the 25 class, or are they waiting for the senior season to evaluate some late?
It's both.
Movers?
It's both. There's some guys that were on their radar before that they're talking to. There's a guy that they were recruiting that was committed elsewhere that they're talking to. Just got a heads up on one of those guys today. And then, of course, they're going to keep their eye out for senior breakouts. I think it's all of it. I think when you have the kind of strategy of, hey, we missed out, we got to figure some stuff out, you have to be open to all strategies. And if you're looking to get 2 guys, and you can't just have, like, we're just going to do this. Go back on some guys you missed out on, see if you can kind of get back with them and kind of, figure out what you're going to do. So I think it's a little bit all of it, Jordan. There are some guys that are on now that are new. There are some guys that they're on now that they're trying to flip. And then there's some guys that are out there that they maybe don't know yet, or that they're on the board, but they just want to see how the senior season goes before they make a move on them. So it's a little bit of all of it. It's
fair. And I like it all. Sean S., thank you so much for the super chat. Appreciate you very much. Maybe too early Current level of confidence Notre Dame can win week 1 in College Station. Elko effect has me concerned. So like a 1 to 10, scale of 1 to 10.
I mean, how much better of a coach do you actually think Mike Elko is than Marcus Freeman? Because he's going into game 1 at Texas A&M. Marcus Freeman is going into game 20 something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I'm more concerned with A&M's talent than I am with the Mike Elko effect in the opener. Now, if they're talking about game 8, 9, 10, now it's a little bit of a different story. But my confidence is still high. I mean, look, Notre Dame's a better team. I like Notre Dame's coordinators better than I like Colin Klein's a really good coordinator. 2 years ago, if they'd have hired him, instead of Jared Parker, I'd be thrilled. But I still think Mike Denbrock's better. I think, they got Jay Bateman as their D coordinator. Mike Elko's going to help and make sure that they're good. But I think you've got Al Golden and Marcus Freeman on the defensive side at Notre Dame. So obviously playing on the road is not easy, and the crowd will be loud and all that. And if you aren't mentally strong enough, crowd noise only affects you if you don't have a good plan and you're not a mentally tough football team. If you're a mentally tough football team and you have a good plan, it's not as big of a deal as people think. But A&M traditionally has been a tougher place to play. Didn't they lose to App State at home last year? So it's not like this team has a supreme confidence they can beat anybody at home. So look, Notre Dame should win that game. It's not going to be easy. I don't think they're going to blow A&M out by any stretch. I think A&M is a good football team. I like Connor. Vince, I've been talking to you about Connor Wegman for years. I like that kid. But I just think Notre Dame's got the better team. So I'm still confident in that game. Now, let's see if they have a bunch of injuries or things that happen or whatever the case may be. But yeah, that's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident.
Yeah.
ND Milton fan with the super chat. Thank you very much. Appreciate you. What effect do you think letting assistants coach players will have? Quicker development, more prepared for games. Hashtag BK looks like a Trex when talking.
I think he means T-Rex.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
Short arms. What effect do you think letting assistant coach players will have? I don't think I kind of.
But don't assistants always coach players? I'm very confused by the question, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not. What effect do you think letting assistants coach players will have?
Is he talking about analysts being allowed to coach players?
Yeah,
you're allowed to have them on the field now.
I think so.
That's probably the route.
Honestly, I think if you're a smart football coach, and it kind of plays into where that's going to help is exactly with what we're seeing right now, where you can send your younger players down, your guys that are, your freshmen, your threes and fours, and you guys are both running your team periods, one direction, the other direction. You actually have real coaches down there working with them. You've got your analysts, you've got Trent Miles, you've got guys like that down there working with them. They're getting really good coaching and a ton of reps. Now, yeah, it'd be nice if they could hear what Mike Denbrock's saying over here, but you can coach off film off that. I would much rather a guy get those reps with the coaching from the analysts than be watching. I'm all for mental reps, but mental reps are never better than physical. Rarely are better than physical reps. Rarely. Right. And so I think it's just having more coaches that can allow you to do more things. You can have, like we're seeing, hey, take my group of young players down there and do a 7-on-7 down there, as opposed to standing around watching our 7-on-7. I think stuff like that is better. And you don't just have 2 GAs down there. You've got maybe a couple GAs, but you've got analysts, you've got guys like that down there, and they're getting really good coaching. Because now you can have sort of an assistant. Like the NFL has an assistant basically at every position. Like they have the assistant coach and then sort of like the assistant to the assistant coach. You know what I mean? Like they do. Just look at their staffs. Yeah. And it's good to have that, because then it's like, hey, you can work on this, you can work on that, game planning wise, but then also on the field, it's like, I remember when I was coaching at Wittenberg, my first year as a coach. Early on, I was helping the quarterbacks coach, Scott Isfording, who's now the OC at one of the MAC schools. Real smart guy. But Izzy would let me take the freshmen that weren't competing, and I would coach them up in drills, because he's like, we had 10 quarterbacks, Vince. He's like, I can't coach 10 guys. And so I'm not giving those guys the bottom of the list good coaching. So I would then go work with those guys. And I was teaching the things that he wanted taught, right? And emphasizing the things that he wanted taught, but they were getting more reps in because we could split them up. And you're going to have more ability to do stuff like that at this level now than you did before.
Another super chat from SRG. Sarge, maybe? If Deuce Knight ultimately decommits, where do you feel this class fits in relation to other Freeman classes?
Ask me on signing day. I mean, I'm not trying to be cop out here, but like, guys, the class isn't complete yet. If he leaves the class, okay, who they replace him with? Do you know the answer to that? I don't. Who are they going to sign at linebacker? Do you know the answer to that? I don't. I mean, there's still guys they're trying to add in the class. Let me see how they finish. And then there's other schools that haven't finished their classes either. So here's what I know. If they keep everybody in the class they have right now, they're going to sign a top 100 tight end. They're going to sign one of the better offensive line classes in the country. They're going to sign probably one of the better linebacker classes in the country. And they're going to sign, in my opinion, the best secondary class in the country in the definitely top 2 or 3. No question. So they're adding a lot of talent at very important positions. We got to see what they do at quarterback if Deuce leaves the class. And as of right now, I don't even really care to talk about Deuce right now. If that tells you anything about how I'm feeling about things right now, he's got to do what he's got to do. And then Notre Dame fans need to be prepared to move on and tip their cap and whatever. But they got to finish well at receiver. There's completion to be done. We're still 4 months plus away from signing day. Let's see what they do.
Yeah.
Let's see what they do from here, because it's not a complete class right now. Nobody has a complete class right now. So let's say it's still a top 5 class. What may be today, but as other schools are adding players and Notre Dame isn't, it may not be in 4 months. It may be a top 10 class now, but they go out and add some guys and flip some guys. Guys break out, and then by the end of the year, it's a top 5 class. I don't know how it's going to go. So, right now, I know that everybody's obsessed with Deuce Knight, but Deuce Knight, if he leaves the class, and who we'll see what he's going to do. It doesn't change how good the tight end is, or how good the O-line class is, or how good the linebacker class is, or how good the DB class is, or how good the defensive line class is. It has no impact on those positions. None. It impacts the quarterback position. That's it.
Right.
That's it. And this is why you go recruit Noah Grubbs. You never take for granted that you're going to have so-and-so on your team. Exactly. You never take it for granted. You go out and keep recruiting studs. And now that they got Noah Grubbs, go find a stud in 2027.
Right.
And that's the reality of it. So that's where I'm at.
Tyler Evans with a super chat. Why did Justin Fuentes never work at Virginia Tech as a head coach?
Actually, Fuente.
Oh,
he said Fuentes. There was no Z at the end of his real name.
Gotcha. I was like, it says a Z there.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. So how come he never worked as head coach of Virginia Tech?
Not the most likable person and not a very good recruiter.
That'll do it.
You
got to be a good recruiter at a place like
ties in the
Tech.
state of Virginia. He was an Oklahoma, Texas kind of guy. Came from, where did he come from? Like Tulsa or something like that. I forget where Justin Fuente was before he went there. He was at Memphis. But like, where else was he at? He was. I know he played at Oklahoma. He's from Oklahoma. He coached at Oklahoma. He played at Oklahoma, Murray State. Coached at Illinois State, TCU, Memphis, and Virginia Tech. Had no ties to the East Coast at all. And just didn't do enough with that staff to build good recruiters, in my opinion. And just, if you can't recruit, you can't win.
Yeah.
I mean, there's got to be some level of being able to recruit there.
Right.
And he wasn't overly well liked. And I don't think he embraced the Frank Beamer success the way he should have. I think he tried too hard to disassociate himself from Beamer ball, and I don't think he should have. But the recruiting is really the biggest problem. We've seen guys who aren't very personable, well liked, that are great coaches, but they have great players.
It helps.
It does. It really does.
Irish Canson, what are your initial thoughts on the 105-man roster change and the impact it will have?
I hate it. I think it's absolutely stupid that the NCAA is going to add more games to the schedule and then shorten the rosters.
Yeah, make them smaller.
That's the stupidest thing ever, but it's the most NCAA thing of all time because it's about one thing and one thing only: money. The more players in the team, the more players you got to pay. That's the only reason the NFL has the small rosters that they have. Bigger the roster, more people got to pay. Right? I mean, I think it's absolutely stupid. You're going to make them play 4 to 5 extra games, maybe. At least 4 for a lot of people. If you lose your conference championship game and don't make the playoff, you got to play 17 games and win a title. oh, and by the way, we're going to make you have 20 less players. Now, again, does that matter on Saturday? No, it doesn't matter as much on Saturday. You got plenty of depth to be successful on Saturday.
Sure.
It hurts your depth on Monday to Friday. It hurts your depth of the course of a season when you're talking about preparation, running scout teams and things like that. It absolutely does. It hurts your special teams. It hurts your walk-on program. I think it's an absolute joke.
It is, they're dressing it up as there's 20 more scholarships. That's how they're dressing it up, right? But the fact that you can only have 105 total players is awful. It's awful. I mean, yeah,
give 20 more scholarships. And then say that you cap Russell 110. Say, listen, if you're a walk-on at a program, your NIL, your money that you make is X amount. Right. I mean, do something like that. But
I have a huge problem. Like, if you want to up the scholarship amount from 85 to 105, awesome. Yep. But don't put a cap on your roster. That I can't stand that, to be honest with you. And there's plenty of schools out there that are propped up by their walk-on program.
That's right.
I mean, legitimate. Some guy tried to have an argument with me. Oh, you don't need a walk-on program to win a national championship and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
Sure you do.
Yeah, you do. Like, I don't.
Like, if you don't hear about it,
exactly.
But trust me, Bama had a great walk-on program under Nick Saban.
Exactly.
You just don't hear about it. Nobody talks about it.
Correct.
Nebraska's program was largely built on getting linemen that were started as walk-ons. I mean, that
right.
So yeah, it does help. Look, you don't win because of your walk-on program, but you can lose if you don't have a good walk-on program. Bingo. I mean, just because, and the more you have to use your scholarship guys to be on scout team, the more injuries you're going to have.
Yeah, absolutely.
And unless you're going to be able to have certain guys up. So sorry, we'd love to have you up getting reps up here, but we can't. We need you down there running a scout team. Sorry.
It will make the 105 limit. I'm interested to see what it does for the lower levels as far as like 1AA, Division II, Division III, because I think that is going to filter guys down. You know what I mean? Like, you're gonna see better guys who would normally go either as a walk-on or whatever to a Division I. Now they're going to be going down to a group of 5, and then those guys are going to be going. I think you're going to see a kind of a watershed moment of talent dropping down a level. I do think that's probably going to be the case to a degree. But
the other thing too is there's going to be guys getting scholarships at those Power 5 schools that are just depth guys.
Yeah,
that would have been going to a MAC school and being a dude.
And you're going to have like honest conversations. You know what I mean? And a guy like Marcus Freeman, I think, has those conversations with guys. Like, look, we're going to scholarship you to come to Notre Dame, but you're pretty much a walk-on that now has a free education. Like, this is where we see you, right? And I think those conversations need to be had, because I think there's also going to be a lot of coaches out there that are selling a bill of goods, which there always will be, right? But hey, man, you got an offer. You got a full scholarship offer to come play for us, and they have no intention of playing you. None.
You're just a depth guy.
Yeah, exactly. So if you sign on and you know exactly what you're getting yourself into, then awesome. Fantastic. But if you sign on thinking that you're going to be a player and you're not, I think I have a problem with that.
If teams are smart, they're still going to get walk-on type players in that 90 to 105 range.
Right. And just scholarship.
Because those guys are going to scholarship them. Like, go get some walk-on type of player.
Don't bring in that guy that's
Henry Garrity still gets a scholarship instead of walking on initially.
Correct.
You'd have gave, you know what I mean? Like, okay, yeah, Henry's a walk-on and he may never be a guy for you, but this way he's going to be your 105. Because you need guys like that. You need guys that can come in and say, hey, you're going to be you're going to be a guy that's just going to be on a depth guy. And maybe someday down the road you play for us.
Right.
But this is what you're coming in to do. Because if you start giving those, like, go out and get a bunch of 4-star kids, and you're going to have this huge roster turnover every year.
Right, exactly.
And a lot of the power teams are going to take kids to stash away to make sure that teams in their league don't get them.
Absolutely.
We didn't have enough room to go get this kid that ended up going to Kentucky. Well, we want to get him. He's not going to play for us because we made the decision these guys are better, but at least he won't go to Kentucky. Like, hey, I'm just going to take this guy. I'm at Michigan, and I'm at, so I'm going to take this kid so he doesn't go to Indiana. Or doesn't go to Minnesota, or doesn't go to Michigan State. Because now we're just going to stash him. Hey, he may leave in a year, but he's probably not going to go there. So you're going to see a lot of that stuff too. It's going to make a really, really shady business even shadier, sadly.
It's awful, but you're absolutely right.
Yeah, sad it is.
Whoa, big time super chat from B Lee 974. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you. I'm ready to move on from recruiting and head to the season. Contributing to the A&M travel budget. You guys are great. Appreciate you, man. That is awesome. I'm so ready to not talk about recruiting, even though it's important. Yeah. Don't get me wrong.
It is, but it's the way that it is, the business is gone now. It's just so not fun to talk about.
I know.
Because it's like, as soon as you get this guy, you're on him before anybody else is. You're pushing him. You see the potential. Then he blows up over the summer, and now it's like, I'm leaving because of money. And like, it's or I'm leaving now because people in the recruiting. And what's even dirtier is how the people that cover recruiting are now involved in the dirtiness of it. And that's disgusts me. Like, so it just, because like everybody now wants to be, I have zero desire to look and say, hey man, I had a role in this. Vince, you know things that I've said and done and had a role in. You don't hear me talking about it because it's like, and I don't really do a lot of that stuff anymore because it's like, that's not my job. Like, I have zero desire to say I influence so-and-so to pick Notre Dame.
Right.
Because I've told guys that work for me, you do that, you're getting fired. That's a fireable offense.
Yeah.
If I find out that you were hyping up Notre Dame to recruit or talking down another program to recruit, you will lose your job. Ask Nick Kramer if he and I had that conversation. Ask Ryan Roberts if he and I had that conversation. That's not our job.
Exactly.
If they want us to do that, then they need to be paying us salaries from their,
exactly.
You know what I mean? Like
100%.
So, it's not our job. But there's a lot of people in the recruiting world that think it's their job to help their school get players, or national people get these kids to flip because then we get stories from it and we make a lot of money. It's a disgusting business. And honestly, if I didn't think I'd lose a good chunk of my business, I'd just stop. I'd only cover recruiting from an analysis standpoint. I would not cover the day-to-day of recruiting if I didn't feel I had to. I'm serious. I just say, look, here's who they got, and here's my thoughts on them. I do commit stories and film breakdowns and all that kind of stuff, but I would not cover the day-to-day. Here's the latest with such and such. I just wouldn't. I wouldn't. I do it because it's a need. It's a necessity.
Yeah, it is.
Not because I like it. And I used to love covering recruiting. And it's always been a dirty business, but now it's disgusting.
Now it's all out there like that. Yeah. I don't know.
People don't even hide it anymore.
Right. Exactly.
It's like, look, men have always, spouses, not just men, but spouses have always been unfaithful to their spouses. But like now it's like flaunted. It's like TV shows about it now. And it's like, we're not even embarrassed by it anymore. It used to be kind of embarrassed, but you knew it was wrong. You just didn't do it. Right. Now it's like, look at me, I'm a whore. It's like, okay, whatever. Like, okay, all right, whatever, dude. You know what I mean? Like, like it's just, it's sad, man. It really is. But it's like people get mad at the kids. I'm not mad at the players. We created this. We're supposed to have them be the ones that make the grown-up decisions. We created this system in this place where this is what's going on. I mean, are the players really supposed to not take advantage of it? Really? We're leaving it to the teenagers are the ones who are supposed to make the mature decisions. Of course they're going to be that way. It's disgusting. Yeah. It really is. But it's us. It's the adults in the room. We've done it. So
completely agree.
Yeah.
It's a major problem, and it's not going to get better anytime soon.
Yeah.
Siggy13, thanks for the super chat. Really appreciate that. Thanks for all the offseason entertainment for the two OGs. I've played Notre Dame at Texas A&M 20 times now in college football 25 on multiple difficulties. Ready for my official prediction. Notre Dame 31, Texas A&M 24.
That's awesome. I love that. They should be good, right? I beat them every time.
It's all good.
I will say this. First time I got the game, I simulated that first game, and Notre Dame won 51-14.
I like that score.
First simulation I did. So I was like, I'll take that.
I like that score.
I'll definitely take that.
I'm down with
sure.
That. Yeah. Not going to be my prediction, but I like the score.
No, definitely not my prediction. Hey, A&M fans that might listen to this, we're not predicting that. We've said we think it's going to be a close game. I'm just telling you what the computer at CFB 25 did the first time I simulated. That's all I'm saying.
By the way, speaking of the game, I got in trouble for taking it on vacation.
Did you really? You knew that was going to happen.
I did. And
you're like, it was worth it.
It was that whole ask for forgiveness thing. Yeah, that's how that went. I totally blamed it on the 17-year-old.
You did. Yeah. Like, I'm the man of the house. Please?
No, he did it.
Yeah.
That's
so messed up.
Yeah, I know.
You should be ashamed of yourself.
No. Still had fun playing it.
You're like, it was so worth it. It was so worth it.
RJG Irving. Mailbag. Why can't Gino just take away Angeli's first read in live practice reps, forcing him into reads 2, 3, and 4, even if he has to force the throw into coverage?
When they do that stuff, they do this stuff all the time. But look, guys, there just comes a point in time where some guys just don't have that or not.
Yeah.
And Ian Book was that way. They had stuff like that for Ian Book all the time, but then you get out to games and it's
didn't matter. Didn't matter.
Right. So now I'm not saying Steve won't get it, because the one thing about Steve Angeli that you have to think about is, and I've said this before, Steve has not played a lot of football.
Right.
His first year as a starter in varsity was 2020, the COVID year. Only played like 5 or 6 games. That's it. In his second year, they were really dominant, and he only passed for like 1,700 some yards. I mean, the kid had less than 2,000 career passing yards coming out of high school. And then, of course, he hasn't played a lot at Notre Dame. So that's part of the reason. So I'm more confident that Steve could eventually figure it out as he gets more reps than I was maybe for an Ian Book, who I'm just like, this guy played a lot of football in high school. And if he doesn't know how to read a defense by his junior year, that's just kind of who he is. You know what I mean? I think that there is a chance for Steve to make a jump because he hasn't played a lot of football. It's just, and he was always on the quarterback on a team that was usually significantly better than the team that they were playing. He didn't need to go past his first read in high school. So I think that factors into a lot of it as well.
Sure.
Yeah. So Vince, we only have time for a couple more because I have to go pick up my wife from the airport. So yeah.
Isaiah Lehman, as of right now, which position group are you most confident in and which are you most nervous about?
Most confident in. I'm most confident. I mean, pick a defensive position, and I'll say I'm confident in it for the most part. I mean, D-line I'm confident in. A corner I'm confident in. Safety I'm confident in. Linebacker is probably the one where I have more questions. I think they're going to be good. How good? Are they just good top 25 type good? Or are they going to be good top 10 type good, right? Like, so there's no position on this team anywhere that I'm like, I think they may be not good there. Like, they're going to be a top 25 caliber team everywhere, including kicker, punter, all of it. The question is, are they going to be good? Are they going to be top 10 good at certain spots or top 5 good at certain spots? That's more of where I'm at. So where are the positions where I'm not sure right now that they're top 10 good? Linebacker, offensive line, receiver. I think receiver, they're probably closest than they are to the others just because of the experience. The Chris Mitchell, Bo Collins, those guys have played a lot of football. It's just now when you see them do it at Notre Dame. I think quarterbacks top 10. I think running backs top 10. I think tight ends top 10. I think D-line's top 10. I think DB's top 10. I think they're top 10 in all those places. Linebacker is a question mark for me as far as are you top 10 or not. I think O-line is a question mark. Are they top 10 right now? And receiver. Is that fair?
I would say punt game because I just don't know yet. I haven't personally seen it with my own eyes.
Sure.
So, honestly,
and we don't know how he's going to kick in a stadium of 100,000 people.
That was going to be the very next thing out of my mouth, is that even if I see him in practice, that is completely different than seeing it live.
I'm just not worried about it because I think the only way that you're really bad at punting is if you can't snap and hold and cover.
Sure.
I've rarely seen a punter that was so bad that your team, it was just bad. I mean, not a place like Notre Dame.
But I'm saying, is he going to be a top 10 punter? Right. Like, that remains to be seen at this point.
I was looking at it more from just an overall special team standpoint. I think
I'm very confident in the kicking game, like the actual place kicking game.
I think their coverage is going to be good. I think their return game is going to be pretty good. I mean, you went out and got a transfer who was a first-team All-American kick returner last year, and he's not even your number one kick return guy on your roster.
Right.
Because Jadarian Price had a better return average. I mean, not better kick return, but the average is not as good. Jadarian was almost 3 yards better per return last year. He just didn't have enough to qualify for the number one. So, yeah.
Big super chat from Bill Shepard. Thank you so much, Bill. Really appreciate it.
Just so you know, Vince, I was complaining about how much it cost when I booked the A&M travel. So I appreciate y'all doing.
This is hilarious.
I should be complaining about money woes. We all have them, right? But
yes,
I appreciate y'all doing this. It really helps a lot. I appreciate y'all.
He says, "Keep the cash coming to help Texas A&M travel costs."
Yeah, appreciate that.
In your opinion, having a bigger game in season opener, i.e., Texas, Ohio State, Michigan, in years past, do you feel it's better for the team as far as focus and hype? Would you rather have a cupcake?
I'll be honest. I would rather have it depends on the circumstances.
It depends on the year,
right?
And what Notre Dame's got coming
But
back.
just without context, I usually would rather have my really big game be in week 2.
Having a warm up.
I'd usually have some kind of warm up game in week 1.
Yeah, that's fair. I agree. I think in this regard, with Texas A&M being who they are, with a brand new coach and everything, I want them week 1.
True.
I'm
at least okay with it.
Yeah, I'm okay with it for sure. If this was the defending national champion, that kind of a thing, I might want a tune-up game.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But in this regard, I'm okay with it being week 1. But I really like the question because normally I would like to have a game ahead of time to just kind of iron out some wrinkles, man. Just get some of those jitters out because, if you've got too many jitters going into week 1, sometimes those jitters can turn into points for the other team, depending on what that means. You know what I'm saying? And you don't want to bury yourself in a manner that you can't come back in a big game. Right. And so I like getting those out of the way.
If you're going to have a game against a really good team in week 1, you don't schedule a team like Marshall in week 2. Like Marshall's significantly better in 2022 than what Northern Illinois. And Northern Illinois was a bowl team last year, but that Marshall team was very good for their level. Now, that's not an excuse.
Sure.
But the thing is, there was such an emotional letdown that next week because you lost Ohio State. Because remember, I kept saying all offseason that Marshall was the trap game for me because of just the emotional part of it. And, where you just want to play a team that you're going to beat no matter what in week 2, if you're going to do that.
Right.
But I'd still, even this year, I'd still rather be week 2 because I'd like to have a game of, Mike Denbrock and Riley Leonard getting that under their belt. I don't necessarily want Charles Jagasaw or Emil Wagner's first real start and real game to be, against A&M.
Sure.
I'd like a game to the receivers get on the same page. I mean, so I would always like that. That's why, because I'm coming from an era where every level of football I've ever been a part of, except for this one, Vince, you have a scrimmage. We had them in high school. We had them at D3. We would always have scrimmages before this first started game. Yeah, like when I was at CNU, we'd played like Hampton Sydney one year, and when I was in Ohio, Defiance, I think we played Ohio Wesleyan one year, and we played a team from Michigan. I'm trying to remember who we played in Michigan one year, and so yeah, you always have scrimmages beforehand.
Gotcha.
And I think they should have them now. Because if you had scrimmages like that, like we've talked about this before, where you should have some sort of system where you can do some sort of like they do in the NFL, where you have like a 3 days together,
combined practice
you
kind
pay
of a
for
deal.
it. You can, the home team always should, pay for it or whatever, but we'll pay for your lodging, you pay for your travel, we'll pay for all your, we'll take care of your food and put you guys up or whatever. But let's say Indiana wants to come up for 3 days and, do like a practice. So you're doing 7-on-7 to get, you have the multiple fields. You can do your individual and stuff like that by yourselves. Notre Dame's got an indoor field, 2 outdoor fields, and then an extra field outside.
A grass field.
Right.
Too.
There's 4 fields. You can have them practice on a couple and do their individual. And then you do 7 1-on-1s against each other. You do 7-on-7s against each other. You do O-line, D-line against each other. You have some
live
team scrimmages.
Yeah.
And okay, now I'm good. Now I'll play whoever in week 1 because I've had some sort of evaluation against someone else.
Yep.
That helps you feel like that we've been able to identify who we are as a team.
Yeah.
And so that's one. So and I don't know that I would ever say I want to play a cupcake. I would want to play it like I wouldn't mind if Miami of Ohio was the opener.
Sure.
That's a quality team. It's a team Notre Dame should beat convincingly, but it's like I don't think you get a lot out of playing like Tennessee State in the opener before A&M. I don't know how. I literally think an inter squad scrimmage the week before would be better for you.
Yeah,
like, I'm serious.
I agree with you.
I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but like it's now playing Northern Illinois. If they would have just flipped the A&M, okay, that's more in line with what I think. There's going to be. We can't just sleepwalk through the game, but we're going to be tested a little bit. But we can work out some kinks and things like that. So it just depends on, like, I don't know that I'd say cupcake. I just would want a team that, we're not going to lose. And some of the mistakes I would rather make some of those. I'd rather Riley Leonard make a mistake and throw a pick against Northern Illinois in the opener than at A&M, that kind of thing, or fumble or whatever. That's kind of where I'm coming from on that. So, like, schedule's perfect the way that it is if you just
flip-flop. Yeah, right. Yeah. So get that.
That's where I'm at. Vince, got one more before we get out of here, because I did want to get to this question from Isaiah Layman, excuse me.
Which player would help Notre Dame the most if they had an All-American season other than Riley Leonard?
I'm very curious what your answer is to this one, Vince. What player in this team helps this team the most if they have an All-American season other than Riley Leonard? I know my answer is actually an easy one.
Is it really? Okay. I'm gonna tell you the names that are floating around in my head. Okay. Emil Wagner is one. Drake Bowen is another one, and then maybe like a Jaden Greathouse maybe might be another one for me.
We're close to mine.
Okay,
you're close to mine. I think you think Jagasaw, Shrouth. I think Drake Bowen's a good one. Riley Mills is one that kind of popped in my head as a potential one. Christian Gray. But I'm kind of confident in, like, defense. I'm confident on defense.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I get
that. I think Jeremiah Love. But I'm like, to me, the thing that really takes this team to the next level, if one guy broke out, which one? It would. I thought Jaden Greathouse, Chris Mitchell, but I'm really going to settle in on this one, Bo Collins. Because if Notre Dame had an All-American boundary receiver, I don't know how you defend this team. I don't. Because because Denbrock likes to run a lot of 3x1.
Yeah.
Whether start 2x2, motion to 3x1, or start 3x1 and motion to 2x2, or come back to, he does a lot of 3x1. If you've got Mitchell Evans, Jaden Greathouse, and Chris Mitchell to the field, or Jordan Faison, or whoever, and you've got an All-American boundary receivers backside, I don't know how you defend this football team. I really don't. Because how can you put enough numbers to defend the trip side when you've got a guy in the boundary that you can't defend, that you can't guard because he's an All-American? Like, I don't know how you defend that team. And now, if you're going to do certain things with your safety to help out, now I'm in empty sets going 3x1 with a back weak, and I'm now running some arrows and some different things with Jeremiah Love because your safety can't help. And now I've got your will linebacker isolated on Jeremiah Love because you're so focused on my boundary All-American. I don't know how teams defend that offense if that's the case. I really don't. Like, and again, this isn't necessarily about Bo being better. It's just, if that position had an All-American, like, how do you defend Jaden Greathouse and Mitchell Evans to the field, or Chris Evans and Jaden Greathouse to the field, Vince, if you're worried about a boundary All-American? I just don't know how you defend that. I really don't. So that's my answer.
I like it.
There's a lot of good ones, but that would be mine. So there we go, Vince. That'll do it for us, man.
All right. That's going to do it for this edition of the Friday Free-For-All Mailbag. Make sure you hit the like button, the subscribe button, the notification bell, share with your family and friends, and jump on the boards. Boards.irishbreakdown.com. You get your practice reports immediately as soon as we get back. You're getting analysis. You're getting, film breakdowns. You're getting all the goodness over on the boards, but you got to be a member. Boards.irishbreakdown.com. So you got to get over there if you want to be a part in the know. So thanks for hanging out with us. Really appreciate you. Hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your weekend. If it hasn't started already for you, we'll be back on Monday, right back at it on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.
See you, everybody.